OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is 7:30. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Eoin and Sheahan with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And between now and then, we've got plenty of Euros build up for you. We've got all the build up to Republic of Ireland against Hungary tonight. We're going to be looking back on the weekend's hurling, and we're going to be talking about the French Open as well. We'd love to get your thoughts on all of that. You can tweet us at Off the Ball or comment on the YouTube stream if that's where you're getting us this morning. Our Gillette performance rankings are coming up very shortly indeed, so we'd love your predictions for that, your thoughts on who were the winners, the losers, the people who did all right over the course of the sporting weekend. Sheahan, Hannon, you'll be bringing that to us in a little while. How was your weekend?
Good morning, Eoin. How are things? Yeah, good weekend. Nice to. I think it was the first weekend that felt like a bit of normality. Had a couple of beers outside with friends, and I think it was just a weekend where everyone in Ireland enjoyed a bit of the sun. I got a bit burnt as well, which was great. I would probably burn, and I know it's probably similar to yourself, thinking about the sun, never mind being out in it. So that certainly happened this weekend.
Yeah, it's an occupational hazard for people like you and I when we step out into anything that is, I would say, 12 degrees or over at this point in the year. So yeah, the 5 minutes I spent outside, I mean, I'm tanned. My tan is done for the year. I'm getting to the point now where my freckles will start joining up, and then that'll be my tan sorted for next year.
See, this is the thing with us. It just turns into freckles, and that's all it is. Like I get nervous thinking about foreign holidays because of I guess how pasty I am, but. I've a Formula 1 trip booked with a couple of friends for the end of August for Belgium. Belgium gets quite hot in the summer as well, but that is already in the back of my mind. The fact that factor 50 may not be enough. I'm going to have to really plan this ahead because my skin just can't take it on.
Will this be the first Formula 1 event?
First time I've ever been at a Formula 1 race, all going well. So that's definitely a bucket list event. I know I spoke to John Duggan about this different times before, and he has the Monaco Grand Prix on his bucket list. And that's for obvious reasons. Everyone would love to attend the Monaco Grand Prix, one for the rich and famous. But any Formula 1 race whatsoever, I've spoken to different people who've actually been at them, and like, it's one of those things where the noise, the feel, everything about it, you can only imagine until you're actually there. I felt it was similar for me for the snooker or the Crucible. There are some events where you just kind of have to be there and feel it and experience it, and it totally trumps your expectations and is either far better or far worse than what you expected. But the snooker for me was 100% far better, and here's hoping the Formula 1 is too. It's just one of those things that's on the sporting bucket list.
You can't get sunburnt at the Crucible, which is probably a unique selling point from that perspective. So this is an exciting thing. What else is on your bucket list, Sheahan, that you're actively encouraging yourself to go and cross off? Because everybody's got these bucket lists now, but you've got there ahead of a lot of people actually going about getting it done this summer.
Just get them ticked off. Why not? You only live once. I'd love to go to an FA Cup final involving Manchester United, if possible, or any FA Cup final really. At Wembley, and the Indy 500 Eoin. So I was in Indianapolis in Indiana a couple of years ago, and I went to the track and saw the famous gasoline alley and the yard of bricks and all this crack, and it was just amazing to see it and get that tour of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And I thought to myself, right, if I can get to see an Indy 500 in my lifetime, press box or not, I think it's 500,000 people can actually attend. I know it was on there a week or two. I watched it last week on television. They had, I think, maybe 450 odd thousand people there. So that's another one of those things that I would just love to take off and see that place with fans there. So I think now that people have had a long time off sport, Eoin, to kind of dwell on the fact that we had no sport to attend, we've all managed to kind of construct our own sporting bucket lists. Seeing Monaghan win in All Ireland is an obvious one. I have no control over seeing that whatsoever. So I can just sit and hope, I guess.
Yeah, that one is kind of out of your control, which is there's kind of a beauty to that as well. It does sort of feel, and we're going to have more Formula 1, by the way, in the Gillette Performance Rankings very shortly for anybody who likes the sound of Sheahan Hannon talking about motorsport on a Tuesday morning. But it did feel at the weekend that this was just like this small little respite before the madness truly begins, because like the sporting summer does properly kick into gear this weekend. I don't think there will be a weekend without a Euros game, without a Championship game, without a Lions test, or without some version of the Olympic Games taking place between now and the end of August, really. So I'm glad to hear that you've got your couple of beers and you put the feet up out in the Monaghan sunshine, because the real business starts this weekend.
I feel like it's like a kid asking for chocolate and gets told no for about a year, and then he's thrown hundreds of bars of chocolate at once, because we're going to have to make decisions over the next few weeks, Owen, because as you said, like, what do you choose to watch? You're going to have the guy, you're going to have the Euros, as you said, and then there's going to be little things thrown in as well. There's going to be golf, there's going to be tennis. I don't even know where to start. The whole split screen thing is something I've given out about on this show before, in terms of people not maybe giving one event their full attention, similar to people using social media constantly during a match. But this is different. We may actually have to multi-screen and multitask this, because there's going to be some unmissable sport over the next few weeks, and we can't really miss any of the Euros. You feel like if you're going to go and dive deep into a tournament, you just have to go for it. Watch every single game where possible. Pretend you're an expert, become an expert. But there's going to be GA as well, and we both are going to be keenly watching that over the next few weeks. So I don't know. Multi-screening is going to be key, I think, over the next number of weeks.
This is an amazing moment, everyone. Sheahan Hannon has changed his stance on dual screening. It must truly be a massive summer of sport. We're going to be getting everybody's take on 4 key questions around the Euros over the course of the next few days. We're going to have Mark Lawrenson with us later on. Sheahan is bringing us our daily Euro show throughout the entire competition. So what we're going to be asking everyone is to pick their winner, to pick their surprise package, to pick their golden boot winner, and a young player to watch. We'd love to hear from you on that as well. If you want to leave those 4 categories in the comments, we'll get to them before the end of this morning's show. But Shane, we will be turning our attention as well to tonight's game, as we kind of judge how the Republic of Ireland can actually fare against a team who did make it to Euro 2020, Hungary, who would have been a lot of people's surprise package, I reckon, for the Euros, were it not for the fact that they're drawn into this group of death. They're a really good side, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Ireland actually get on against a big crowd, and also against a team that are pretty well set up for this year's tournament. So we're going to go to Stephen Kenny here. He was speaking in the most recent Irish press conference about his goalkeeping options and whether he needs to give game time to Liverpool's Caoimhín Kelleher.
And I'm cognizant, I'm Caoimhín's biggest fan. He played for the under-21 teams 10 times. Had he been fit in March, he would have started, I think it's fair to say, for the qualifiers. Gavin Bazunu come in and just been absolutely excellent. And sometimes if you take your chance, but I am cognizant of that. But I would like Gavin to get some time in front of a crowd, a passionate crowd, before the games against Portugal away is the next one, because he's not played in front of a crowd all year. At club level there's been no crowds, and so I would like him to experience that as well. But Caoimhín as well, I would like Caoimhín to get some game time.
Is Gavin now number 1 for you going into September?
No, I think we'll number 1. I think we've got obviously the 3 keepers in the camp have been all very talented. Obviously we want them to get as much game time as they can at their clubs. That's very important, and it hasn't been always possible because some of them obviously have been behind the number 2 at their clubs, and it's not easy and for them, and they're really talented, we feel, the 3 of them, and so a lot can happen between now and September, so I wouldn't like to put a label on it now at this stage.
Not badly stacked in this department, Shane, as it turns out. Kelleher, Bazunu, Darren Randolph. Which one are you going for if the game against Portugal is tomorrow?
It's an interesting one, because very interesting to hear Stephen Kenny there saying I'm Caoimhín's biggest fan, because Caoimhín's sitting on the bench for the last 4 games, including tonight, is probably thinking to himself, really? You're my biggest fan? These are caps that I could have done with. And when you look back at the end of your career, you want to have as many international caps as possible. The fact is, Caoimhín's still looking for one. So Gavin Bazunu, and the fact that one really interesting thing that Stephen said there was talking about his desire to get Gavin playing in front of fans, and that's a very fair point, because his loan spell at Rochdale last season, while it was a great experience for him, albeit they got relegated, he didn't get to play in front of fans because, of course, all of these games were behind closed doors. The Europa League game, I think he played a couple of years ago, for Shamrock Rovers was around 8,000 fans. Tonight could be 15,000, given Budapest is doing quite well in terms of COVID numbers. So 15,000 home fans, home as in Hungarian fans in full voice tonight. That's a really, really good experience for Gavin to get. You'd expect Caoimhín to come on at some point as well, maybe get that first cap tonight while we have this friendly window. But nobody wants to be remembered as a backup international goalkeeper for their career. So this is a crucial couple of weeks, a number of months for both Gavin Bazunu and Caoimhín Kelleher, because you think of people like Alan Kelly, Paddy Kenny, Nick Colgan, Dean Kiley, all fantastic goalkeepers. But the reality is, at international level, they will always have been remembered as, standby, backup, number 2, whatever it is, sub goalkeeper. And neither of these guys want to be remembered for that when it comes to the end of their career. Of course, they'll be delighted to pick up as many caps as they can, but you want to be number 1 for your country. As things stand for me, I think Bazunu has done quite well in the few games he's played. He won't want to remember his debut for too long, that Luxembourg defeat, but still, all as it is, he's number 1 at the moment, Gavin Bazunu. And when Darren Randolph comes in, maybe he can shake him off again, but it's a nice headache, I think, for Stephen Kenny to have, Owen. Yeah,
like 3 proper options in that department, and 2 of which obviously just with this massive ceiling. So it's a very, very exciting time to be somebody who's interested in Irish goalkeeping. So I think from the sounds of that, it looks like Gavin Bazunu is in the box seat at the moment. But still, tonight's game against Hungary might actually give us a bit more information on that front. It is 7:41 on this Tuesday morning. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And it is with that, it is time for Sheahan Hannon's Gillette Performance Rankings.
That wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. Our performances was just lacked that intensity.
All right, at the start of every week, we go through the good, the bad and the grand from the weekend sport. Sheahan Hannon, we are starting with the bad. Where are we going?
A bad weekend for John Ram. And a weekend that looked like a really good weekend for John Ram, because he loves playing at the Memorial Tournament in Dublin, Ohio, as we saw last year with his win. And then you're thinking 3 rounds in, Owen, this is going to plan for the Spaniard. And then, of course, we had that 6-stroke lead, stunning third round at Muirfield Village. And then he tests positive for COVID-19. He tested negative for 4 consecutive days. And then that positive test came from a sample collected Saturday morning. And there was a bit of a darkness halt to his second round as well. Had a 2-shot lead after that. And then an 8 under 64 in that third round on Saturday had everyone talking. But then what they were all talking about was this little meeting, I guess, where he's informed by officials at the end of his round, immediately after the end of his round, that he has tested positive for COVID-19. So given the news by PGA Tour medical personnel as he walked off the 18th green, and he spoke about his disappointment afterwards, and you could actually see visibly the disappointment in his face when he's told this news. Look, Patrick Cantlay ends up going on to win the tournament in a playoff against Colm Morikawa. Cantlay called it at the time the worst situation. Not the worst situation for him at the end of the whole weekend, but they informed Ram on Monday, the US PGA Tour, that he had been in close contact with someone confirmed with COVID-19. Ram himself was asymptomatic, chose to compete under these tighter virus safety protocols. This involved daily testing, restricted access to the facilities as well, and restricting his contacts. And then that third test, or the test during his third round, returned as positive while he was on the course. And a second test requested by a PGA medical advisor also came back positive just before he finished his third round. So hence the delay. And hence, I guess, Owen, why they waited until the very end of his round to tell him. And he just leaned forward after he got this news and said, not again. The interesting thing for me, Eoin, I don't know how you think about this, but Scotty Scheffler, who was his playing partner, one of his playing partners during that third round, said, I think it's terrible they told him in front of the cameras. And I couldn't help but agree, because there was, look, for the fans, a great sense of drama, and all we saw was him being told some bad news, and you kind of feared the worst than you thought. What's he being told here? Because clearly it's something not very good. But the fact that they did it in front of the cameras, I don't know, it leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth. Yeah, we had comments from Jack Nicklaus afterwards saying that they should send him a trophy for
winning 3/4 of the tournament, which was an interesting one. It's absolutely gutting for John Ram. Initially, when you look at it, it's like this is kind of the dying sting of the pandemic in sport in America, that over the next little while, obviously, as more players get vaccinated, this thing is less likely to happen, you would assume anyway. And this is just one of these stories where we thought we'd kind of gone beyond it at this point. As you say, the public nature of how he found out perhaps doesn't reflect too well on everybody. But what are you going to do? I mean, you're out in the course and you're one of the officials, and all of a sudden you've got this information that the guy who is tearing it up on the course actually shouldn't be out there at all. It's a very, very tricky situation for everyone. But the narrative is there perfectly, Shane, for him to go and win the US Open now.
Yeah, it's set up really well. And the thing is, look, he said in a statement afterwards, look, my family's okay, I'm okay, I'll take all the necessary precautions to get back to normal. And this is the good thing. At least he's asymptomatic, he doesn't feel bad. But it's the worst case scenario for the tournament organisers. If you're the memorial organisers, you're thinking to yourself, oh no, this is horrific, because golf has done quite well, done very well, in fact, in terms of keeping the virus at bay, ensuring the players and spectators have been, I guess, as safe as possible, and trying to keep the numbers as low as they possibly can. And they have done a seriously good job at that. I know that, I think, wasn't it that this tournament they were offering out, free vaccines to whoever, I guess, wanted them. Some players had them, some players didn't. But he's been the man that everyone loves to watch and play well at like in recent tournaments. He's only 26 years of age at the end of the day as well. So it is, as you said, set up incredibly nicely for the US Open. Regardless of this, he'll go in as one of the tournament favourites because of that 64 on Saturday was just impeccable. And it was just drama at its most heightened sense, because you saw some of the US networks as well having their, I guess, on-course reporters milling around the clubhouse afterwards and just waiting to hear what this information was. And there was a great clip online of one of the reporters just saying, yeah, look, he's been diagnosed with COVID-19, and a long silence left there afterwards, because nobody could believe it. This was worst case scenario in terms of the weekend for John, because he had to pull out of the tournament. So what a dramatic way for that to happen. But nobody is going to be as disappointed as John Ram this weekend.
We did promise the people more Formula One content, Shane. Where are we going next in the red?
So I'm going to go a red weekend for Nikita Mazepin, Eoin. So he's a Haas driver in Formula One, and he's a crap driver. I'm going to put it out there. He is bad at driving cars. Now, it was an enjoyable Formula One weekend. Anyone who saw the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku, beautiful looking city. Kind of some of the streets are a bit Monaco-esque in terms of the feel of the race, but there is a little bit more overtaking that might happen at Monaco. Lewis Hamilton ended up in 15th. He led the race at one point, had a lock-up, which was entirely his own fault. Pirelli tyres got a bit of slack as well. Max Verstappen of Red Bull led at one point and had a rear blowout, and Pirelli taking a lot of stick. But it led to a win for his Red Bull teammate, Sergio Checo Perez. Driver of the day, probably Sebastian Vettel. And he was just incredible. The experience he's got over the years, the battles he's had with Lewis Hamilton over the years. Driver of the day with Aston Martin, the first ever podium for Aston Martin as well. And then a battle you had towards the end between Pierre Gasly, Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris for the podium in third. And Gasly ends up doing it. But Nikita Mazepin, Owen, I don't know how I can defend this guy, because he's a teammate of Mick Schumacher, famously the son of Michael. And Mick, it was only his 6th Formula One race, and avoided a massive accident essentially against his own teammates. So there was one point they were approaching Mazepin's slipstream. They were approaching speeds of 200 miles per hour on the start-finish straight. So a place where overtaking generally is encouraged and considered by drivers. Mazepin suddenly moved to the right in a move to prevent his teammate Mick Schumacher from getting by, and squeezed him against the concrete wall. Now, Schumacher responded just in time to avoid what would have been a fairly bad accident. And you can see as he passed Mazepin, Schumacher is gesticulating wildly with his arms, and then he starts talking over the radio. What the F was that? Honestly, seriously, does he want to kill us? Which is just an extraordinary thing to hear over Formula One radio. And Formula One radio is great anyway. You get some serious nuggets out of any weekend's racing. But the fact that a teammate is saying that, does he want to kill us seriously? And look, you might ask, how did Nikita Mazepin become a Formula One driver? There's only 20 places on the grid. Is it just insane talent? No. Is it the hours of practice he puts in? No. Is it the fact that he's the son of a Russian billionaire oligarch, Dmitry Mazepin, who brings a lot of money with him into the team? Yes, probably, I would say, is why Nikita Mazepin is driving in Formula One. So, I mean, Gunther Steiner, the Haas team principal, came out afterwards and tried to kind of diffuse the situation, say there isn't a problem between these drivers. But at the end of the day, and you can also look this up on YouTube, Owen, there are compilation videos of times Nikita Mazepin has made mistakes or driven other drivers insane on the team radio, saying, what is this guy doing? So Nikita Mazepin, bad weekend for you, and you are bad at driving Formula One cars.
To make matters worse, he's going to be drafted into the Russian army at some point. I see his father was talking about the fact that he needs to join, obviously, between the ages of whatever it is, 18 and 28 or something like that. And that predicament is coming down the line for him pretty soon. But then again, if your dad can get you into the Formula One championship, then he might be able to get you off with maybe a shortened term in the Russian army, but maybe it would be better for everybody if he actually went and did his time. So they're the bad, Shane. They're your reds gone. So let's move into the amber, the kind of not so good or the not so great. I see the FAI are down here in the orange this morning. Why are they in orange?
Yeah, I'm gonna go amber for the FAI because, and I've only chosen amber because to balance this out, we didn't have the shock, terrible defeat against Andorra that threatened for all of 6 minutes the other night, and managed to avoid the worst defeat in their history. So for that reason, the FAI get off a little bit lightly here. But for Lee Carsley reasons, it hasn't been the greatest of weeks for the FAI. So we all remember when Damien Duff stepped aside from his role as Stephen Kenny's assistant. Number of names thrown into the ring. John O'Shea was one. He's doing great work with Reading as a first-team coach. Anthony Barry ultimately gets the job. And look, you can't doubt Anthony Barry's credentials. Probably a bit of a surprise pick at the time. But the fact is, he's now a Champions League winning coach with Chelsea. He's a great person to have involved in the Irish camp. I saw Seamus Coleman congratulating him at training the other day when he came back into the team after that Champions League win for Chelsea over Man City. But Lee Carsley is the one that got away, Owen. So we all know his credentials as a coach now. And look, a person who had a seriously good career with Ireland. I think it was 40-odd caps he had with the Republic of Ireland as a player. But the reports that this week were that Lee Carsley is set to be appointed as England under-21 manager, so replacing Eddie Boothroyd. Nicky Butt was involved in, one of the people that they interviewed or that was up for the role. Paul Tisdale was another. But it appears that the deal is reportedly set for Lee Carsley to take that job, which is a huge job for Lee Carsley to take over as the England under-21 coach. Worked in coaching and management for 9 years. Retired back in 2011. He's worked with the likes of Man City. He's worked with Pep Guardiola. Coached the likes of Jadon Sancho, Phil Foden in City underage setups. The experience he's garnered over the last number of years is quite incredible. And he's got those 40-odd caps. A lot of people will talk about that playoff, the Euro 2000 playoff against Turkey, harshly penalised for handball. Dropped by Mick McCarthy for the second leg of that game. Only spent 2 minutes on the pitch at the 2002 World Cup. But the fact is, he's now a coach that we should be chasing left, right and centre to get involved in the Irish setup at some point. It feels like a missed opportunity now because he's kind of tied into this England under-21 gig. And what a gig it is for him. I saw Football Insider was one of the reports I read at the time, and it called him Englishman Lee Carsley. So this is what's going to happen. He's going to be called an Englishman if he starts taking these big gigs, and we're all going to forget that he was an Irish player at one point. So one that got away for the FAI, I think, Owen, and it's a bit disappointing to see him. For him, of course, he's going to take that job. It's an offer he can't refuse, but it feels like one that got away for the FAI.
Yeah, at the same time, it is a pathway where you think to yourself, what can actually be done to try and tap into that resource that exists there. He goes into coaching with Coventry after finishing his career there, and really a couple of years later it's with Manchester City and the academy there that he starts to build up a real reputation. I know that he would have been on the show quite a few times actually during his time at Manchester City, talking through the work he was doing there, and it was really at that moment I think everybody kind of became aware that, oh, hold on, Lee Carsley actually has something here. Somebody thinks that this guy is very, very good at what he does. And obviously the gig started getting more important. He started to get more responsibility. And then the national interest from the FA actually came. So they were quick to act on what they saw over in England. And I'm just not sure if maybe people in the FAI actually realised how good this guy was, because there was clearly an effort to try and promote homegrown coaches over the last couple of years, in particular when those couple of contracts were handed out for the Mick McCarthy era, followed by the Stephen Kenny era. And I just wonder how involved Lee Carsley's name was in those conversations, because, as you rightly point out there, already at that point his CV was indicative of somebody who was going to go quite far in his coaching game. It's interesting as well, actually, I know it's not fully confirmed yet, is it? So is there going to be a little bit of a bidding war here for Lee Carsley? I know Duncan Ferguson has said that he would love to have him in as assistant if he was to become Everton boss over the next little while. So this is a man in high demand. The great thing is, if Lee Carsley was interested in never coming back and working with the FAI, you're getting somebody who is unbelievably experienced. But the flip side of that coin is that Gareth Southgate is a former England under-21 manager. The pathway, once you get that 21s job in England, is pretty sweet if you do a good job. And the great news for Lee Carsley is that his predecessor was Eddie Boothroyd, who, let's face it, wasn't exactly the most amazing under-21 manager, doesn't exactly leave behind him a glittering reputation for Carsley to live up to. So everything is aligned pretty well for him at this point.
I mean, it's a major promotion. There's no getting away from that. But the fact is, he's had the experience now, as you said. He's managed Coventry as a caretaker. He's managed Birmingham as a caretaker. Brentford he's managed as well. So, when he moved into that full-time role with the with the FA on a full-time basis, that was a sign that they were putting their faith in Lee Carsley. They thought this guy is a serious coach. Even our own former man, Kevin Kilban, I know he's a good friend of Lee Carsley's, and he was kind of talking on Twitter last night about the fact that he is an exceptional coach. And it seems anyone who's worked with him kind of says the same. I know you've had him on the show, as you said before, and his knowledge of the game is incredible. And he's someone that clearly puts a lot of thought into coaching. He probably lies awake at night thinking about coaching. This is his talent. And look, I don't want it to be one that got away for the Republic of Ireland. At some point, as you said, he might be a future Republic of Ireland manager. Who knows? But you kind of have to think, and you mentioned it there, the fact that there's been a kind of a homegrown push for homegrown assistants. With Robbie Keane and Damien Duff are involved. They've kind of gone outside the box a little bit, Stephen Kenny, with Anthony Barry. But having said that, if Anthony Barry is a success, which unquestionably he probably will be, but if he brings Ireland to a major tournament under Stephen Kenny, you cannot question the decision making that they didn't go for a homegrown coach at this point. But look, Lee Carsley is someone who knows down the tracks he could be the most experienced Irish manager ever, and with a CV that is the envy of a lot of coaches around the world. So it mightn't be the end of the Lee Carsley FAI story, but for this weekend, I guess it's a disappointing one. Yeah, and I think it'd be the best case scenario of the current Irish setup works out really well at under-21 level and at senior level, and if Lee Carsley also works out well, because I think it's fair to say we'd all love to see him doing really well as England under-20s manager. And then it's kind of like, oh, hold on a minute, there's actually a few Irish coaches dotted around Ireland and the UK who are doing really well for themselves, and that cannot be a bad thing for the future of the game here, at least. So that is your amber this week, Shane, because the FAI maybe missed a trick with Lee Carsley over the last couple of years. But on more positive things, we're going to the green in this morning's performance rankings. What are we starting with here? Yeah, green in the performance rankings. The green of Limerick, Eoin, is where we're going to start, because I guess hurling fans over the last number of weeks will be looking at the National League and thinking, okay, Limerick have lost a couple of games here. Lost to Galway, lost to Waterford, and you're starting to think, are Limerick normal? Are they a normal team? They're league champions, All-Ireland champions, a terrifying prospect. But they lose these couple of games, and you're thinking, okay, maybe we're going to have quite an exciting year ahead in the hurling. But then they put up 33 points at the Gaelic rounds over the weekend against Cork, and you're just thinking to yourself, this Limerick team are something else. Because when you think about the players that they didn't even have involved at the weekend, Eoin, Kyle Hayes, Seamus Flanagan, George Hegarty, Dan Morrissey, Mike Casey, Nicky Quaid, David Dempsey, that's terrifying. They have players to come in, and the ruthless start in that game is something you would think to yourself, this is what champions do. 20 points to 1-7 ahead at halftime, even by the first water break. And this is clearly something that they're targeting as well. 11 points to 1-3 ahead, 4 scores to 11. I mean, Cian Lynch was excellent for them in that game. 3 points from play, integral to everything good they did in the match. And they finished with 12 different scorers, which just shows the talent in this Limerick team. And a lot of them young boys as well. There's players that have kind of come in this year and been really, really exciting. Cathal O'Neill started in attack against Galway, came on in the match against Cork at the weekend. Colin Coughlin made his debut at wing back. Both had scored a couple of points each in that game as well. So clearly have no fear coming into this Limerick team. But they were just scary, turning over some of those Cork puckouts for anyone who saw the match. Now, you might think to yourself, maybe it's shadowboxing a little bit. I know they play Cork in the championship in Thurles in 4 weeks' time. But you can say that all you want. At the end of the day, they still want to win these games, especially after losing a couple. And I listened to John Kiley's interview after the game. He talked about work rate. He talked about use of the ball. He talked about their energy levels. So clearly they're a fit team at the moment as well, Limerick. And their patience in tackling as well is another thing. And the fact that they're working as a unit. So, I mean, I know it's only one game and you don't want to lump any predictions based on one game. But ultimately, look, I know Cork came back a bit in the second half and won the second half, in fact. But that 33 points to 219 win at the Gaelic Grounds for Limerick could spell trouble for some of the teams later in the championship that they play against.
Yeah, Limerick were very, very, very angry on Saturday night, it turned out. Like, you do write this team off at your peril. And maybe Limerick had been, I don't know, a little bit aware of what was being said about them over the last few weeks and was like, screw that, we are still Limerick. And you kind of point to a few of the new names that are coming through. It's just interesting to see how well this conveyor belt actually gets tested over the next little while, because people are like, why are Limerick so good? What happened to Limerick over the last few years? And people point to the brilliant work that's been done on development level, which, of course, is the truth when it comes to their 2 All-Irelands in 3 years. But I do think the litmus test is how they go over the next 5-10 years to see when this team, the great team of the last couple of years, starts to phase out. Are the new kids, and you mentioned a few of them there, at that level as well? The very early signs are that they might be, and that this actually could be a terrifying force in hurling over the next decade or so, this Limerick team. But they were awesome on Saturday night, and I guess they're just kind of back to their best, where they're not overly concerned about goals. They will pick you off consistently over the course of 70-80 minutes, and you don't really stand a hope with the score that they will put up on a points tally, because they will get 30 plus points if they have a decent day. They don't even need to be amazing, they just need to be decent, and they'll put up 30 something points against you. So that's just an awesome unit and very, very hard to stop. But as you say, 3rd of July is the real one. Well, there just has to have been a little bit of shadow boxing about it, but the early signs, maybe from Cork's perspective, not great ahead of that one. You'd certainly favour Limerick heavily after the performance they put in on Saturday night. So that is our hurling for the performance rankings. We are going to be joined by James Skehill, by the way, in about 10 minutes' time to look back on the weekend's hurling as a whole, because there is a load of great stuff to get into. But Shane Hannon, we are finishing this morning with the performance rankings, with the green in the performance rankings, with the most important sporting event of the weekend.
Indeed. Floyd Mayweather's bank account is certainly in the green this weekend, Eoin. After that, would you call it a fight? Maybe we'll call it a fight for argument's sake, but against the YouTube personality Logan Paul during the weekend. Went 8 rounds, the 8 rounds that it was supposed to go. Mayweather landed 43 blows to Logan Paul's 28. I don't know why I'm analysing the fight like it's a normal fight. I'll stop doing that now. Leaves a bit of a weird taste in the mouth watching something like this, when you know it's, there's no winner, there's no, I guess, record after it, there's no anything really. Logan Paul's only attribute that he brings to this is that he has 66 million social media followers, a lot of whom, in fact, would have been pay-per-view buyers at the weekend. And look, Mayweather's 20 years older than him. Logan Paul has a 4-inch reach over him, 34 pounds over him as well. At 189 pounds, by far the heaviest fighter that Floyd Mayweather has ever faced in his career. Mayweather could probably finish this fight if he wanted to. There was another element of, knowing the audience, knowing that, maybe there could be a rematch at some point. I won't knock him out here. I'll let this go 8 rounds. But the fact of the matter is, there were boos at the end of the fight, understandably, because it felt like a bit of a light sparring session for Floyd Mayweather. I guess people in the crowd either wanted to see Mayweather knock Logan Paul out, or the absolute shock that would have been Logan Paul winning. Neither of those things happened, so left the fans a little bit, I guess, upset. But if you look at the money involved here, so sold at $49.99 a pop on pay-per-view, and then you had the audience at Miami's Hard Rock Stadium where the fight took place. Mayweather said last week he expected to earn between 50 and 100 million US dollars from the fight, and then Logan Paul was guaranteed $250,000 and a 10% cut, more importantly, of pay-per-view earnings. So what a good weekend for Floyd Mayweather's bank account and Logan Paul's bank account, for those that care about Logan Paul and his own YouTube career. But Floyd spoke afterwards and he said, when it comes to legalized bank robbing, I'm the best. And he's not wrong there. As he described it, this was a heist, a money-making machine for the two men. And that's all that really matters. You can give out of it, Floyd Mayweather tarring his name, tarring his legacy, taking part in a fight like this. But at the end of the day, if you're offered $50 to $100 million to get into a ring against a YouTuber, and you're Floyd Mayweather, I mean, I'm sorry, you're not really going to say no, are you? You're just going to get in there and do the business, do the 8 rounds, leave the possibility of a rematch there for the taking, come out afterwards, as Floyd did, and say, oh, he was actually a better fighter than I thought, which is complete crap, to be fair. He's not a boxer. He's just a YouTube prankster. But at the end of the day, for Floyd Mayweather's bank account, it was a very, very good weekend, Owen.
It's good to note that that's what his selling point is, prankster, YouTube prankster. I was never aware, and I just didn't find the time in my schedule to actually find out what he is or who he is. So pranks is obviously his thing. I just do love the temerity of the crowd to get up and boo something that they knowingly paid for. They were like, oh, Floyd Mayweather versus YouTube prankster ended up not being a very good sporting event. I'm therefore going to boo despite the fact that I've paid for said sporting event. What a shock that this is. Floyd Mayweather not knocking out a man and engaging in a pretty dull fight. Who would have thought that would have happened? So, oh God, I don't know. People are interesting, Sheahan, there to actually go and pay for that. I would dare say that was nowhere near your sporting bucket list. This is not the Belgian Grand Prix. This is not something you would be happy to part money with. But you know what? Some people are happy to part money with this, and good luck to them. Good luck to people who wanted to actually watch this, but to actually pay the money and then show up and then boo it afterwards, I don't know, just smacks of a little bit of hypocrisy, to be quite honest. But Floyd Mayweather, congratulations to you. Your bank account is in a much better place than it was last week. That is this week's performance rankings. We'd love to hear your thoughts on who should have made Shane's list. We're going to come back and give away Gillette starter pack later on today on OTB AM. So just drop us a tweet at Off the Ball with your shouts for who should have been in those performance rankings, and we'll pick out a winner at the end of this morning's show. So that is today's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
Okay, it is 8 minutes past 8. We're going to be joined by Mark Lawrenson a little bit later on to look ahead to Ireland against Hungary tonight and give us his take on Euro 2020 as well. We're also going to be joined by James Skehill very shortly as well to look back on the weekend's hurling. And Colm will be with us to talk about Roland Garros as well before 9 o'clock. The sports page is coming your way in just a moment. And the dominant story, as you can imagine, is Stephen Kenny's press conference from yesterday, the build-up to this game. Can Ireland go back-to-back and get back-to-back wins under Stephen Kenny for the first time? Well, here is Stephen Kenny. Here is some of his pre-Hungary press conference. And he was asked about Troy Parrott and his best position.
Yeah, listen, he's had that sort of career even in the Irish underage teams where he's been used in a lot of positions, and he has tactical flexibility. And at club level at Millwall, they played sort of 3-4-3. They played on the left a lot, and at Ipswich, he wasn't really used as a number 9, but that's what Tottenham would see him as. They see him as a number 9. So it's he definitely has the capacity to play higher and, you know, play in that attacking number 10 position. He's got better at, or he's good at linking the play as well, and he has the capacity to arrive late and score goals, and, you know, so he definitely can play that. You know, can we play it against Hungary with two wingers and two players like that? you leave yourself quite open away from home playing like that. So can we adapt in other areas to allow him to do that? That's the question. And so we have to tactically modify the possibilities, you know, before we can get him to do that. But yeah, we do feel he is a threat. As some of the other young players, Adam Ida coming through and Jason Knight getting his first goal can give Jason a lot of confidence, I feel.
It's interesting, Shane, listening to him talk about Troy Parrott there, that maybe we look through his stats for the season just gone and automatically say that was a bad season for Troy Parrott, when in actual fact what might have happened was it was closer to a tough season for Troy Parrott. He was given a number of different challenges with a number of clubs. Like, let's face it, he did play for a couple of clubs this season who wouldn't have been punching at a weight that maybe Troy Parrott would have felt he would have been doing at underage level with Tottenham Hotspur, and maybe not being the dominant team on the field, going to a tough level of senior football, and then on top of that being played a little bit out of position in the context of what we would have seen at underage level with Tottenham Hotspur. And I guess the relief on his face, the way he celebrated the goals against Andorra, just paints the picture of a man who is quite relieved to finally get off the mark for Ireland, is finally hopeful about where his immediate prospects may lie in his football career that did look so hopeful a very short time ago.
Yeah, it's like, I guess for a striker, confidence equals goals. And, you know, as you said, the celebration he had, and the celebration all the Irish players had when he scored that first goal, and then when he scored the second to put Ireland back in the lead, or to put Ireland into the lead, I mean, that showed what it meant to him. And the fact that it took, I think, Ireland's youngest outfield player on the pitch to kind of step up to the mark, when for those 5 or 6, 7 minutes you're thinking to yourself, we're 1-0 down to Andorra here. This is absolutely abysmal and could be the worst result in Ireland's history if it ended up that way. Thankfully it didn't. But Troy Parrott stood up to the mark and took his 2 goals really well, especially the first. And the fact that it's someone like Troy Parrott and his relative inexperience who's, I guess, taking that mantle on, picking up the ball and going, right, I'm going to do something about this here, leaves a lot of question marks already answered about him and what he's capable of doing, because regardless of the quality of the opposition or lack thereof, it's still an international match and something. And he turned around and created something when the team needed something. The comparisons to Robbie Keane are a little bit unfair sometimes. It puts a little bit of pressure on his shoulders, his very young shoulders. But I'm sure he ignores that. He seems to have a decent head in his shoulders, and he knows any comparisons to someone like Robbie Keane, just take it as a compliment, take it on the chin. Don't get too worked up about it. But the goals will come for Troy Parrott, and the fact that he's got 2 there the other day means he'll be kind of bringing that confidence into his club life as well, you would hope. He's now an international goal scorer, someone who is capable of performing on the big stage for Ireland, and Stephen Kenny clearly has a lot of faith in him. He's just one of these players that he likes. Worked with him in the 21s team as well, and you know, working alongside some of the older players in the Irish setup can only help him. People like John Egan, people like Seamus Coleman, people he can learn from and kind of pick up little tips and tricks from. The future is bright for Troy Parrott. There's no doubt about it. And look, last weekend was proof in the pudding of what he's capable of doing.
We just wanted to go back to the Lee Carsley story for just a moment as well, Shane.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I guess reports have been that Carsley that Stephen Kenny had actually gone for Lee Carsley and then got knocked back, and that's why they eventually went for Anthony Barry. So, like, we kind of spoke about the fact that the FAI maybe missed a trick. We don't know the full story, and of course there is that chance that, as we said, the FAI may well have gone for Lee Carsley, got knocked back. He's in that role in the FA, and it's going to be hard to kind of get him out of that role now that he's embedded with them. But it's a tough one. But look, it's one of those decisions that maybe Stephen Kenny ultimately made. They went for Anthony Barry in the end up. Maybe if they couldn't get Lee Carsley, he was the next best option on their list. But yeah, look, he's got options. He's got options, Stephen Kenny. And just on Caoimhín Kelleher as well, we spoke about him. I mean, he wasn't on the bench for those last 4 games that Gavin Bazunu was involved in. Was going to start that game in March, but got injured, missed those games. Bazunu got in. So even though we said, you know, maybe Kenny isn't the biggest fan of Caoimhín Kelleher because he hasn't been playing him, we have to remember too that he wanted to play him in that game in March. Bazunu got in and kind of has held on to the spot. So maybe time will tell that Caoimhín can kind of sneak his way back in. So I just wanted to make that clear, I guess.
All right, it is 8:15 on this Tuesday morning. A packed show still to come right here on OTB AM. We're going to be back talking hurling with former Galway goalkeeper James Skehill right after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
I signed with the Rod squad in 2011, that summer. Do you know, like, you hear, I signed in the back of the smoke pack. Roddy, I would say, is like the Irish Harry Redknapp. We lost that championship game against Donegal. We didn't lose a game for 7 years after that. I tell you, we were angry after that game. Dublin came back, I remember, in 2015, it was, we're putting this right.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're very welcome back. So, all this week on OTB AM, we'll be bringing you the chance to win a €150 Expert Electrical voucher with thanks to the good folks over at Expert Electrical, your home for large screen televisions this summer. It is a sporting summer at Expert, and you can find your perfect TV on expert.ie or in their 67 stores nationwide. We'll have a voucher winner every morning, and then one of those lucky winners will also have the chance to win a 55-inch Philips TV if their name is picked out of the hat on this Saturday's Off the Ball show. To be in with a chance to win, just name this morning's mystery voice.
The psychological confrontation here. They want to win the game line. Same as Maul D, same as Scrum. We don't let it happen, lads. You
can tweet us your answer at Off the Ball. That is with thanks to Expert Electrical. Right, at 16 minutes past 8 on this Tuesday morning, it is time to turn our attention to the weekend's hurling. James Skehill is on the line. James, good morning to you.
Morning, guys. How are you keeping?
Good, thanks. We might just start with that Limerick-Cork game because we were talking about it a little bit earlier on. Was this a statement from Limerick, a sort of don't write us off too soon, we are back and we're actually kind of getting better in some areas?
Yeah, I think the story with the league is not about how you start, it's really how you finish. And I think Limerick are coming into a really good situation now whereby they've got a relatively easy last game to round out the league. They were clinical. They were really, really clinical. Like the kind of words that stuck with me over the course of the game was Limerick were extremely proactive, whereas Cork were really reactive. So Limerick had great structure. I was so impressed by their forwards when they look at kind of the Cork puck out as an opportunity to create a score for themselves. Like historically, you'd look at other teams and forwards would be looking to their backs or midfield to kind of create a score for them. Whereas I think the Limerick forwards now, they suss out puck outs and say, right, we can do our own work here. And they were exception. Like I think they turned over 8 or 9 puck outs in the first half alone, and they just put Cork to bed. You know, whereas Cork looked really extremely reactive. Their execution was poor. Let's be frank about it. I was watching Patrick Collins closely in the goals, and he just looked like he didn't know where the ball was going to go at any given stage. They tried the short puck out for long periods in the first half. Like 9 of those puck outs didn't go to hand. So what that did straight away then was create an element of nervousness with the back, who was immediately closed down with the Limerick forwards. And then that just created a snowball effect where the rot was getting worse. And Cork just couldn't really recover. Now, I will say about Cork, when you look at their game plan and their pattern, they're missing what looks to be like a link man or a big man in the middle of the field who can win dirty ball. Because if you're looking at the Limerick backs, who they're going to come up against again in the future, you're talking about big, strong men. You're going to have guys in there in the middle who are going to be able to win their own possession, win the dirty ball, and feed the likes of Jack Coughlin side, or Jack Connor, should I say, who did great damage for the couple of goals, you know. And I suppose Cork is a tricky one because they didn't have Seamus Harnedy, they didn't start Patrick Horgan. I think there was a bit of shadow boxing. I think they were probably saying, I think Kieran Kingston was looking at the game and thinking to himself, I'm going to throw out a couple of young guys who are relatively inexperienced here, and if they perform well, it might give them a boost going forward against Limerick. That kind of backfired. Let's be frank about it. They had to introduce Luke Meade and Patrick Horgan at half time to try and pull the thing back and create a bit of just stop the kind of damage limitations at that stage, you know. But despite Limerick's effectiveness and huge scoring, this Cork only lost by 8 or 9 points, so it's not all doom and gloom.
Absolutely. The one thing though, James, is that if we're trying to read into what was real from Saturday night, the way Cork have been going, I think the short puck out, the way they've been using their restart is real. I think that is something that Cork have targeted as something different for this year and something that they'll be looking to use in the championship, and maybe that is the biggest concern, the way Limerick managed to lock that down. So if you're the Cork goalkeeper, what should your reaction be when that panic starts setting in? Is it stick to the process? Is it try and slow the whole thing down? Is it change the tactics up? What would you do in that position?
Well, first of all, you have to understand what is the process. And so when you're talking about a process, where do you educate yourself in the process? It's on the training ground. So when I'm looking at a team that whether involved with Galway or whether involved with Captagon, the club, I'm looking for a real buy-in from the forwards and midfield to help me help them. So like too many people look at the goalkeeper and say it's all on them for the puck out. There's no shared responsibility. That's the way some people look at it. For me, it's all shared responsibility. A huge thing, and I'll go back to Limerick for a second, on the 32nd minute, the Sunday game did a view behind the goal where Barry Hennessy was taking the puck out. And you look at the structure, every one of the Limerick guys knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to engage the Cork players in some way, shape or form that could either create a short for Barry or a long. What happened ultimately was 4 guys lined up in the middle in the centre forward position. Pat Ryan was in the 15 corner. He vacated it, created a whole channel of space. Barry pops it in there and Tom Barnsley gets the ball. That's pure shared responsibility. That's the process, what Limerick did. Then you flip the coin there, look at Cork and Patrick Collins, and I could see it in his face. He's looking out and he's scanning from left to right, wondering, where am I putting the ball here? And it just screamed to me that there wasn't enough training and there wasn't enough, let's say, analysis done to identify weak points in Limerick, whereas Limerick identified Cork weak points and they just went straight for the throat. If I'm Patrick Collins, I think I'm going to have to go, if things aren't working short, you're just going to have to send everybody out and shove it down as far as you can into his zone and try to create something down there. Which is kind of worrisome on one front, because if you're going down long, and I'm looking at the Cork half-forward line, I'm thinking they haven't really got the contestability that Limerick have in the half-forward line. You look at Tom Morrissey, Keane Lynch, Gareth Secretary, they're all win their own ball primary position. And then if they don't win primary position, Gareth Donovan and Will O'Donoghue who are straight in on secondary position. So they've got a great pattern to play. Whereas Cork, I'm not sure. I just don't see it. I don't see it. How many times did you see Jim Byrne go up and get the ball over Cork lads, And that's going to be troublesome for when they're trying to create scores. Because if you're looking at Limerick, who had 18 shots in the first quarter with like 11 points, huge efficiency. How many shots are you going to get against Limerick? You're probably going to get maybe, will you get 35 shots? And for you to beat Limerick, you're going to have to hit 90% efficiency. That's an absolutely massive efficiency rate. Whereas the average in hurling nowadays is probably 65, 70. So Cork are going to have to really look at the Limerick backs, look at their pattern at the minute they're set up, and try to figure out a way around it. Because right now, there's nothing in sight.
James, if you're a coach trying to set up to play this Limerick team at the moment or heading into championship, and look, it's Eoin mentioned it earlier on as maybe the lack of goals the Limerick have scored. It's probably clutching at straws for me to call that a worry. I think they only have maybe one league goal so far compared to Cork's 14 or 15. 7 of those granted came against Westmeath. But if you're a coach setting up against this Limerick team at the moment, are there any areas of that Limerick team or of their style of play that you can target and say, okay, that's a weakness, that's something we can kind of play towards?
Yeah, I'm looking at, and I'm not going to necessarily say it's a weakness, but I'm looking at Declan Hannon, and he's in the 6th position, and he's not, like, the word sweeper has never been mentioned in Limerick's vocabulary. No one has ever identified Limerick and said they play with a sweeper. When I'm looking at Declan Hannon, he's effectively playing as a sweeper for me. He sits off the number 6 pocket, off whoever he's marking at 11, and then the midfield guys cover him. On dead balls and place balls, yes, he's pushing up marking 11, but he's always floating around the full back position. So to try and come forward and get on loose ball. I would put guys on Declan Hannon. I'm going down the middle. I'm going to try to target him on a high ball, and just get runners in through the middle. When you look at Limerick, they've conceded goals. How? It's through pace. Again, the 2 goals they conceded at the weekend was they were to bypass a half-back line and get in behind. I think the full-back line, there is a bit of suspect there with regards to pace. Both goals, man was out in front, takes the turn, hits straight for the goal with a bit of pace, and ended up in goals. And Cork, let's say, realistically speaking, despite all the deficiencies, could have had 5 goals. They could have had 4 or 5 goals. That's the many opportunities they had. And they were all created through straight line running, heading straight for the black spot and creating pace. And I think Limerick, what they do as well is they are going to foul you. So they're going to try and kind of protect the house somewhat. If you look at so many still shots when Cork go on attack, there's 6 and 7 Limerick guys back inside their 21, 45, trying to, I suppose, damage limitations. So the ball has got to be really, really fast. I spoke on it last week. There's a zone you have to strike the ball against Limerick. If you strike it from your own 2 and 4 full back line, they're going to eat you up in their half back line. You have to bring it forward up 20-30 yards more, get in over the half back line into space, and then hit them at runners. And I think going down the Kyle Hayes side, going down the Jim Byrne side, I don't think it's going to be good for them on the high ball, let's say, for an opposition team. I think down the middle and in the channels, let's say, left and right of them, the 6 is a good way to attack them.
The problem, I guess, with that, James, is if you target that area, you can't necessarily just pick out Declan Hannon and say that's who we want to go at. There is a number of other bodies in there, which is the whole point, I guess, of him being in there almost to plug that gap in front of the full back line.
Yeah, there is, yeah. But like, you're going to have to, if you're going to beat Limerick, you're going to have a couple of workarounds here. You know, like there has to be a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. You know, you can't just go in with the one plan and then scratch your head in the middle of the game wondering why isn't this working? You know what I mean? I spoke last week about how reactive Limerick are after the water breaks. And I think if a team went out and targeted like a Declan Hannon person with that channel, you would see Limerick would readjust after the first water break, or certainly after half time. They're going to have to come with a couple of different game plans, you know? And like, I think goals, you have to get goals against Limerick. You're not going to beat them in a shootout. I think we've seen that now in the last couple of weeks. They're shooting 25, 30 points at their ease, and like from various angles. And I think if you're going to beat Limerick, you have to have 2, 3, even 4 goals, if I dare to say it, you know, and hit them straight down in the full back line. That's what I think.
Let's talk a little bit about Waterford against Galway, James. I know you were watching this game for us at the weekend. This was an absolutely cracking game. I just wanted to start by talking about the most famous hurler on the pitch in Joe Canning. I know it's an easy one to go to, James, but he looked so good on Sunday, just maybe in a way that we haven't seen too much. Like, his game intelligence is obviously something that everybody's been aware of for a long, long time, but his ability to bring his teammates into the game was notable on Sunday, wasn't it?
There you go. You just took the words out of my mouth. I think in years previous, I'm going back a few years ago, Joe would have obviously been recognised as the best player on the team. And I think he would have tried to carry that mantle and do an awful lot of things himself, you know. He'd have tried to win his own ball, shoot everything, score everything. Whereas I think where he's at now, he's in a good place in the sense that it's not necessarily he has to do everything himself, but now he's making guys around him better. And like, when you've got a person like that who, as I mentioned earlier, can unlock a defence with a flick. If you take the last goal, for example, like the dispossessed Ozzie Gleeson, and Joe just with a simple flick, you know, he sets up Brian Cannon for what's really an easy finish. And that's a prime example of a guy who was winning the ball and making it for his teammates have an easy finish, have an easy job to do, so he's making them better. And there's a really good balance in the forwards at the minute. Like, they can multi-change. Like, the 6 forwards can play in either position, so they have a good unit. And I think Joe's still key to that. He's 33 in October, and there's no real signs of it. He's got a lot of mileage on the clock, let's be fair, a lot of years done, but he looks awful fresh. He's as lean as I've ever seen him. I saw him after the pitch up close, and like, there isn't a pick in him, so he's put himself in the best position to have a really good summer. He's put through an awful lot of hard work. When you look at Joe, you think people would automatically think of sidelines, they think of the magic goals, but they don't see the hours in the gym, they don't see the early morning runs, you know, and all the work he's done throughout lockdowns by himself to get himself into a condition that's going to be a facilitation for a heavy summer. Like, when you think he's 33, his metabolism is not as quick as it is, he has to work that bit harder. He's had a lot of injuries, as I just said, so he's going to be stiff and sore every morning, but at least he's keeping on top of it, and he looks in fine shape. Fantastic.
Well, what is Joe like in the dressing room and in and around training then, James? Is he vocal in his leadership? Is he clearly the main man, even if you didn't watch any of the available talent play hurling?
No, I think what Galway would have had a really good set of leaders, let's say, so he doesn't have to be the whole focal point. Like, you won't see him saying everything. Like, obviously when he says something, like so many others, people listen, and he's a great example for the young guys because his work ethic in training is second to none. He's always trying to get training. He's always trying to do a bit extra with his place balls. That's why he's, like, from a practice perspective, that's why he's still the best at sidelines and frees and whatnot. He does more. I would say Joe will lead more by action than through words, you know, which is the best type of leader for me. Because when you're in, you know, a heavy championship game, let's say, you often can't hear words, you know, because obviously for crowds and whatnot, not in this game. But for me, body language is about 70-80% of your communication on a game. So when I see Joe going well, let's say, and he's leading the charge, heading down the middle like he did for one of the goals in the first half of the last day, you know, that's the kind of leader I want to see. So words, he doesn't have to do that. His actions on the field, he's fantastic that way.
James, I guess while we're dishing out praise for players who played well in that match of the weekend, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Colm Lyons, because he's someone who, for Waterford fans, is an incredibly exciting player. Extraordinary performance again at the weekend. 5 points from play, I think it was. And what an athlete this guy is. We talk about, you know, how almost professional GA has become in terms of the attitude of the players, the training they put in, the nutrition and stuff as well. But when you see Colm Lyons going up and down that pitch at the weekend, what an incredible athlete he is. Just how good was his performance?
Yeah, he was excellent. Now, I'm not trying to sound negative or dismissive here, but I wonder, was is wing back where he's named. That's his best position. He scored 5 points, yes. But also as a defensive unit, Watford, the forwards conceded 423 from play. That's like, and again, I'm not trying to be dismissive or negative. I'm just wondering, is that his best position? Should he be wing back? Is he more suited to midfield where he can do, or even a Keane Lynch type role? Keane Lynch is playing at 11, let's say 11 is on his back, but he's 8, 9, 5, 6, 7, he's everywhere, let's say. He kind of has a free role. And so, like, if you have an athlete who's as prime and athletic and as Callum Lyons is wing back really his best position? Is that where he's going to do the most damage for you? Or is he going to be probably the creation of damage by him going forward the whole time? I think probably Watford, what they do is they're looking at like the Kyle Hayes type person who is bombing going forward, let's say, doing great damage. And that's great for TV, that's great for the fans to view. But again, I go back to Limerick, they have a system that covers Kyle Hayes when he shoots off. So Kyle Hayes goes up the field to get a point, but there's someone straight away to cover him, and he's part of an overall great unit, defensive unit. I don't think Watford are there yet. I think they still have major deficiencies in their half-back line. I don't know, is Ozzy the right man for 6, but I think it's just a case of who's left. You know what I mean? Because like Tyke de Burke would be obviously the number 6 there. I'm not really sure. Like we obviously don't have major access to what Watford are doing during the week. I'm not sure why Kevin Moran isn't getting more game time. Like again, the number 6 nowadays, they say he's more of a vocal communicator, kind of an organizer, general of the back. So I can't see why Kevin is not playing 6 and Ozzy up further up the field. Like maybe Ozzy could do a job for you at number 5 and release Callum Lyons. But there's no doubt what you said. Like Callum Lyons is a fantastic athlete. He's really an exciting prospect. Like between himself and Ila Daly and Desiree Hutchinson, they've got new guys over the last year and a half that can really add to Watford. I think it's a case. I'm looking at Watford and I'm saying who's their link man. So like what I mean by that is that like the link between the backs and forwards is who's a bit of a creator. A bit like I've used the Bruno Fernandes, the Kevin De Bruyne kind of thing, person who can take from the back and bring it forward. It's Keane Lynch in Limerick, it's Cathal Mannion in Galway, it's Noel McGrath and Tipperary, and I just don't see it in Watford. And that was really evident in the second half of last day when there was a bit of a breeze, and the only way they could get a bit of ball in was to fire down to the 13th corner where Desiree Hutchinson was essentially left to his own devices. Now he did a lot of damage, don't get me wrong, but in championship games you can't expect one forward to do all the damage for you and try win off frees. So I think there's more questions than answers come out from the Watford performance. Yes, Callum Lyons was fantastic the weekend, but I think Liam Cahill still has a lot to answer.
So do you think Austin Gleeson would actually be better deployed at wing back rather than centre back?
I do, yeah, absolutely. I 100% do. I think Ozzy would, if he's given a more of a, I suppose, a hurling role, if that makes sense. Like you look at, again, forgive me now, I keep using Declan Hannon as the example, let's say, but there's a defensive system set around him, let's say, that facilitates him to do what he wants. And like Declan he's a recognition. He recognised the pattern of the play. So how many times do you see Declan Hannon coming off a shoulder of Sean Finn or Rich English, who's facing the ball? So what Declan will be doing is he's obviously recognising the pattern play up front before he gets the ball. So he has that free time to be assessing the situation. As soon as he gets the ball, it's delivered and they set up an attack. And I think if you had someone like Ozzy Gleeson or Kevin Moran who could be in the 6 and who could be facilitated that way, you get more. Like Kevin has a really good delivery of a ball. He's got a great brain experience, so he could fill that role well. Ozzy Gleeson, he's obviously got himself in great shape and specific workout routine or program, and so he's trimmed down. He looks fit. I just don't think he's suited to marking people. I think he's suited to people having to mark him. So I think the more forward you're pushing guys, probably the better is for Watford. Like into a midfield or half-back midfield is probably the most idealistic place for him. Getting the ball to him could be tricky if you push him up too far to the pitch. That was the age-old question with Joe Kenny for years. But now we see what when you have the link man who can get the ball in, the damage that's going to be created there. So I think I don't have the answer. But I think Ozzy, let's say, at probably for me, number 5 or number 8 is probably the best place for him. Try to give him a bit of a free role and a bit of a chance to work to.
James, can I just ask you about the scoreline in that game? I mean, 428 to 323 is quite incredible and just shows how far hurling has come and where it's headed, I guess. Interesting comments from Henry Shefflin quite recently talking about the GA maybe having to consider modifying the sliotar, maybe outlawing scores from longer range frees perhaps as well. But I almost feel like it's like when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. You're starting to think, okay, once it's broken now, how far can this actually go? How far can the human body take it? I mean, how far do you think hurling can go in terms of scorelines here? Because, I mean, do you enjoy these kind of back and forth yo-yo scoring battles like, oh, I won it for the weekend? Or do you think maybe along the lines of what Henry Shefflin is saying, that maybe something needs to be done to kind of curb it somewhat?
Yeah, I just think I think GA people are a small bit guilty of trying to use, use their theories to prove a fact, whereas I like to use a fact to prove my theory, let's say. So I'm looking at the weight of the sliotar, and it's a hot topic, and everyone says make the sliotar heavier. But a good story for you, let's say 2005, Galway played Cork in the Ireland senior final, and we played Limerick in the minor final beforehand. After we were doing the compulsory lap of honour with the cup, the Cork mentors had set up their pre-warm-up drills, and of course me being with me. And I just happened to come across them during the week there, the O'Neill's balls with high rims. So I decided I'd weigh the ball. I took out the porridge scale anyways, and I weighed the ball from 2005, 16 years ago, and it was 111 grams, 112 grams, excuse me. And I weighed a new ball, the All-Star Cummins ball, the yellow one that we have, that was 111 grams. So the ball from 16 years previous was one gram heavier, or lighter, should I say, excuse me. But the major difference in the ball was the rim thickness. Now, the only sport that I can think of where no rims makes a huge difference is baseball. So like you look at baseball, the weight of the baseball is 145 grams. So that's 30 grams heavier than a sliotar, 30 odd grams you could say. And the average distance of a home run is 125 metres. So the weight of the ball has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's all about the rims. So when you look at the rim thickness, let's say in the GA terms, it's supposed to be between 2.2 and 2.4 mil. But I can tell you 9/10 of balls that are dished out nowadays are aimed at sails. And so the rims are really, really low. They're less than a mil. You nearly rub your finger over them and you'd nearly feel nothing. You know what I mean? So it's all about the rims, the aerodynamics. And hurlers love low rims for three things. One, obviously the ball travels far. Two, is because they can get their touch perfect. The ball won't bounce off anyway. The ski will off the same. The last one is when they strike the ball, it keeps the true line. So it's dead straight and doesn't veer off. So I don't think the sliotar has anything got to, the weight has nothing got to do with it. It's all got to do with the aerodynamics of the rims. And I do think the rims need to be increased a small bit. They don't need to go to massive levels where you're hitting 3-4 mil and they're taking the hand off you when you're catching them. They just need to be increased a bit, and in the distance the ball won't travel as far. Because it has got to a stage now whereby, free takers going back to their own 30-yard line. Like if you're a forward, give away free in your own 30-yard line, I think Jesus, the goalie going to come out here and pop this, So it's like something will be done. I do think something will be done in the near future. I think the rims are going to have to be increased. I think Croke Park will come back in and pick 4 or 5 sliotar manufacturers and get them to increase the rims and say, and I suppose half the problem will be sorted thereafter. Another issue that was raised during the week was the size of the hurls. I do think the hurls the size of the boss are gone crazy. So I see some of the guys down in our club here now, and I'm putting my hurl and I'm overlapping them, overlaying their hurl over mine, and their hurls are bigger than mine. I'm the goalie. So, I think they need to be shortened down a small bit, let's say, with the width of the boss. There's guys swinging frying pans out there outfield, and that all facilitates itself to long distance shooting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is a couple of things to look at. I don't think it's doom and gloom. There's so much negativity surrounding the ball and the shooting and everything. Like, we want free scoring, of course we do. But the argument with regards to the weight of the sliotar is completely refuted when you look at the weight of sliotar 16 years ago and now, and you look at the weight of a baseball and how far that travels. So there's a couple of little tweaks, and I think we're fine. What's more worrisome for me, guys, is the free count. Like you look at Tony Kelly and TJ Reid in a couple of weeks ago, 20 points and I think 118 respectively, and about 15 place balls each. That's the more worrisome thing for me. It's the way that the games are being refed. And I think if you look at 90% of club games around the country, what we see from a ref perspective in county games at the moment, in some county games, should I say, is what you see in most club games. You see the rules being applied to the letter of the law. And I'm guilty of it myself, guys, when you're in a game. If there's any little question over foul at all, I'm screaming at the ref to give it to us. Because you can probably sway him a bit. You can probably get on him a small bit. And when the crowds are in a game and there's a bit of a contentious foul or a little tackle that normally you get away with, crowds are on the ref and they'll give it to you. You know what I mean? So I think what the spectator wants in inter-county hurling is free-flowing hurling without stoppages. We don't want breaks. We don't want to turn out like rugby where the TMOs are overruling the game here and there's so many stoppages and the rugby game has taken 2 hours. We want fast, we want pace, we want adrenaline. We pride ourselves in hurling being the fastest field game in the world, and that doesn't facilitate itself when you have the ref stopping it every now and then. That's a bigger issue for me than the sliotar.
100%. There is something spontaneous about an open play effort from 100 yards that goes flying over the bar where there might have been a man on, and people are still enthralled by that. But it is the fact that TJ Reid can put the ball down 100 yards out from goal with no one challenging him, and everybody expects him to put it over, which kills the spontaneity. For me, anyway, that's the issue. That's fascinating stuff on the ball, James. We must get into that in greater detail in future. Maybe even have a look at the rims and maybe your tiny hurley as well that you seem to be using inside in goals. You need to get a bigger one for yourself. James Skehill, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. And we'll get into Antrim and the consistency that they're showing, and 100% Kilkenny as well at some point during the week. A very busy weekend of hurling indeed. And you can check out more of James's thoughts on our YouTube channel as well, because he was watching that Galway-Waterford game for us. Neil Treacy is back with us in studio. How are you, Neil?
I'm good, guys. How are you this morning?
Yeah, all good. Any crack?
Not too much. I was absolutely enthralled listening to that was the best bit of hurling nerdery I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Talking about, like, when have we ever heard people talking about the specific millimetres of the thickness of the rim on a slitter? That was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't too aware of it myself. Like, it's interesting. It's all about obviously the aerodynamics of it. So again, this is probably a conversation for another day. But I wonder if like the soaking the balls in the water, as would have been done in the good old skullduggery days of the Munster Championship, would that have actually made a massive difference? Like I presume that does change the aerodynamics of it a little bit, but maybe not. Maybe just a heavier slitter actually just doesn't make that much of a difference. It's all about the way it actually floats in the air. So, God, I don't know. Like this is a science deep dive that we need to get into.
I love the image of James Skehill last week taking out the weighing scales to weigh
and the baseball
to get the weight of a baseball, of a modern slitter, and of a slitter from. Did he have a slitter from 16 years ago? I missed that part. Had he kept one for all these years just for his little science experiment at home? That was brilliant, I have to say.
This is... the hurling people have taken the science of the game to a whole new level, like Derek McGrath on TV on Sunday, having picked up a 1914 hurley on the way to RT Studios in order to have a look at it. I think it was 1914 anyway. Apologies to Derek McGrath if I've got that one wrong. But this is the level that everybody's going to try and figure out what exactly is the technological advancement here that has made the game quite different. And I guess it's the rapidness of growth as well over the last couple of years, which is certainly raising a few eyebrows. I presume there's plenty happening as well this morning, Neil?
Yeah, we're going to lead off with some Republic of Ireland preview. Republic of Ireland manager Stephen Kenny says he's starting to see training ground work reaping dividends on the pitch. They go in search of their second win in a row tonight, having waited 11 games for a first victory under Kenny. They'll be hoping to follow up the 4-1 win against Andorra with another positive result tonight away to Hungary. Kick-off in Budapest at 7 o'clock Irish time. Kenny says they've been working tirelessly on the training ground, and that Troy Parrott's second goal against Andorra last week was a perfect example of that.
Troy Parrott's goal that he scored, the second header, he scored that goal probably 8 times in training before he scored it in the match. You know, we've been working on the whole concept of the De Bruyne cross, for example, from that narrow angle inside the box is a really exceptionally dangerous cross. Troy, the previous 2 days, he's not been noted for his headed finishes, and scored a lot of headed goals coming late. And likewise, Jason Knight's movement on the back post to score from Daryl Horgan's goal.
Meanwhile, Emmett Brennan is the latest Irish boxer to confirm his place at the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. The Dubliner secured his spot in the Irish travelling party with a unanimous decision win in yesterday's box-off against Sweden's Liridon Nuha at the Olympic qualifying event in Paris. It brings Ireland's boxing delegation at the Games up to 7. Meanwhile, Michaela Walsh and Kelly Harrington both boxed for gold at the qualifying event today. Both boxers already assured of their place at the Games in Tokyo, though. Kelly Harrington faces 20-year-old British lightweight Caroline Dubois in her final, while Walsh takes on Italian Irma Testa. There was disappointment, high-profile disappointment for the Irish men's 4x100 medley relay swimming team yesterday. They had their invitation to compete at the Olympic Games rescinded, with World Swimming Body FINA saying the invitation was issued in error. Swim Ireland have said they will challenge the decision, having only accepted the invitation on Saturday. In good news, though, Thomas Barr and Michelle Finn have both secured qualification for the Olympics after some strong performances in Finland yesterday. Barr stormed home at a season-best time of 48.39 seconds to win his 400-metre hurdles race and secure his place at the Games. It was his fastest time since he won bronze at the 2018 European Championships. Finn had an excellent time of 9 minutes 29.25 seconds to finish second behind Winfred Yavi of Bahrain in her 3,000-metre race and also qualify for the Games. In rugby, 4 Munster players have been treated for superficial burns after a domestic accident. CJ Standard, Damien de Allende, RG Snyman and Mike Haley were all injured in an accident with a fire pit. The province say that Standard and Haley's injuries to their hands are less serious and they'll train this week. But de Allende and Snyman won't be involved in training. They suffered more substantial burns to their legs, hands and face. The province say the Springbok duo are still set to meet up with their national team, though, ahead of the Lions series, having been named in the South Africa squad on Saturday.
Mad story, isn't it? Like, this is
absolutely crazy.
Like, I guess we have to wait to see more detail come out, but you assume that this is just a lucky escape almost when you hear fire pit mentioned in the context of an accident, really, and that if the two lads are actually going to be available for the Springboks, then I think maybe people have got away with pretty luckily here that their playing season hasn't been impacted too severely, and that we're even talking about the playing season as the entire context of these injuries that they've sustained over the last couple of days probably reflects quite well on how fortunate they've been.
Yeah, it certainly does. Eoin van Graan, in the brief statement Munster put out yesterday, like, he simply just said obviously it's disappointing, but God, like, they're just very, very relieved that it wasn't anything more serious and that the players are extremely lucky. Now, as you said, like, it probably is a good indication that it's not too serious for Dale Ende and Snyman, that Munster say they will still be linking up with the South Africa squad for the Lions series. They do still have to see specialists this week, but as they said, it's superficial burns rather than anything too serious. But yeah, like, I mean, it could have been far, far worse. Even looking at when the news came through yesterday evening, I saw someone tweet it initially, and, like, to be totally honest, it was such a bizarre line. I thought it was some strange joke that I wasn't entirely getting and was kind of going over my head, and it was only a minute or so later when I noticed Munster had put it out themselves as well. And, like, it was the fact that it was just kind of put in there along with Conor Murray is back full training this week ahead of the game against Zebra, where you're going, whoa, like, I certainly have not seen anything like this before. But yeah, look, thankfully it doesn't look like it's anything too serious, thank God.
Yeah, is that it for this morning, Neil?
No, just a couple of other little bits on French Open. Rafael Nadal remaining on course for a fifth straight French Open title. The world number 3 will take on Diego Schwartzman in the quarterfinals after a straight sets win against Yannick Skinner yesterday. Novak Djokovic fought back from 2 sets down to lead 4-love in the fifth of his fourth round match before Italian teenager Lorenzo Messetti had to retire with an injury. The quarterfinals get underway. 2 quarterfinals in both the men's and women's draw. In the men's draw, Australian Open finalist Daniel Medvedev takes on the 5th seed Stefanos Tsitsipas, and Germany's 6th seed Alexander Zverev goes up against the unseeded Alejandro Davidovich Fokina of Spain. While in the women's draw, Slovenian Tamara Zidansel faces Spain's Paula Badosa first up this morning, and then 21st seed Elena Rybakina takes on Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova later on today.
Neil Treacy, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million. It is 8:47 on this Tuesday morning, and just to let you know that all this week on OTB AM we'll be bringing you the chance to win a €150 Expert Electrical voucher with thanks to the good folks over at Expert Electrical, your home for large screen televisions this summer. It's a sporting summer at Expert, and you can find your perfect TV on expert.ie or in their 67 stores nationwide. We'll have a voucher winner every morning here, and then one of those lucky winners will also have the chance to win a 55-inch Philips TV if their name is picked out of that hat on this Saturday's show on Off the Ball. To be in with a chance to win, just name this morning's mystery voice.
Psychological confrontation here. They want to win the game line. Same as Maldi, same as Scrum. We don't let it happen, lads.
€150 and a chance to win a 55-inch Philips TV on the line here. Here's that voice one more time.
Psychological confrontation here. They want to win the game line. Same as Maldi, same as Scrum. We don't let it happen, lads.
You can tweet us your answer at Off the Ball. Right, it is 8:48 on this Tuesday morning. We're going to get to Colm Boohig in just a moment. But Shane Hannon, this is your last time on OTB AM before you kick off your daily Euro show. So we wanted to just pick the brains of where your research is at the moment. We're going to be asking Mark Lawrenson for his answers to these 4 questions a little bit later on. But we're going to get your quick take right now. First of all, Euro 2020 winners, Shane. Real 2021.
I try not to be too boring with my picks, but in terms of the winners, I'm being very, very boring indeed. I'm picking the favourites, France. So, like, they're obviously in this group of death with Germany, Portugal, and Hungary. But if you can get through that group, I mean, the world is your oyster, Eoin. The world is your oyster. And with Kylian Mbappe in the form that he's in, Benzema back in the fold for the first time since 2015, and also Dembele. I think he only played 9 games for Barcelona this season. Didn't feature much in their World Cup win back in 2018. But Didier Deschamps speaking about him quite recently, saying he's more mature, he's more versatile, back to his best, really. So that should be striking fear into the teams that come up against France at this tournament. I mean, they've got Portugal in their last game in Budapest on the 23rd of June. So if it's still in the melting pot in that game, what a cracker we're going to have there. And I've done the workout here, and maybe Poland or Croatia in a quarterfinal. They'll play a third-place team in the last 16, and then possibly Poland or Croatia in a quarterfinal. And when you look at Kimpembe and Varane in their defence, two of the best top centre-backs in world football, the issue with France in recent tournaments has been off-field things, I guess, and people not getting along as they should. If they can avoid that sort of crap, France are the team to beat at this Euros, no doubt.
Yeah, you look at the squad is absolutely ridiculous. The bench, they could name 2 benches and it'd still be probably better than most of the starting 11s in this year's tournament. So France are going to be your winners. Your surprise package or your dark horse, or however you want to frame this, Shane, what are you going for?
I'm going for Turkey here, Eoin. So Turkey, speaking of France, yeah, quite hipster this answer, but they were second in their qualifying group behind France. Only 2 points behind them as well, and kind of finished, I think, ahead of Iceland. But they took 4 points off France in that qualifying group, beat them 2-0, and drew the other game. The thing about Turkey is they've always been brutal defensively, but they seem to have fixed that. They only conceded 3 goals in their qualifying campaign. They've got Çağlar Söyüncü, the Leicester defender, unassuming character, very mature, someone Brendan Rodgers clearly likes quite a bit. Ozan Kabak as well, who Liverpool fans will be familiar with, having been on loan with them this season. He's actually not guaranteed a place in this Turkish defence starting every single week. So that'll give you the kind of indication as to how strong this defence was in qualifying. Now, they had, of course, the last 4 appearance at Euro 2008. They finished 3rd at the World Cup, famously, in South Korea and Japan in 2002. Their manager back then was Şenol Güneş, back in 2002, that famous tournament. He's also their manager again now, years later. And he's a guy who can take the pressure. He was Besiktas manager, and he was hit by an object thrown by Fenerbahce fans. Had to get stitches after that game. He's one of these characters that's just been through the wars. He's very, very popular in Turkey as well. But as I said, pushing France all the way in that qualifying group. Cenk Tosun, unfortunately, the Everton striker, is out of this tournament. Suffered a knee injury, I think it was, on loan with Besiktas. So he's a bit of a blow. But Burak Yilmaz, their striker, second highest scorer for Turkey of all time, and he was in incredible form for Lille this season. They won Ligue 1 in France for the first time in 10 years. 17 goals in all competitions. He's 35 years of age. But for me, I mean, they're in a group with Italy, Switzerland and Wales, so not the easiest group to get out of. But I think they're going to get out of that group and potentially take a scalp or 2 on.
Yeah, I think semi-final spot for Turkey is a very realistic possibility if it's going to be Netherlands and Denmark as their route to the semis, which are 2 winnable games from Turkey's standpoint. That side of the draw in general is just hipster haven, really. If it's not going to be Turkey that people are predicting as their dark horse, it's going to be Denmark, I think, that a lot of people are going to be picking as well. That brings us on to Golden Boot, Shane. I think Burak Yilmaz is actually a decent outside bet for this, but I dare say that's not who you're going for.
No, Yilmaz, though, is certainly an outside one. But one person that popped into my head, but he wasn't my pick, was Robert Lewandowski. Like 41 goals in 29 Bundesliga games is hard to ignore. And certainly he has to be in consideration. But he's only got 2 goals in 11 major tournament matches, which doesn't make for good reading for him. And Poland will have to get out of that group in order for him to kind of go far in the scoring stakes. I'm going to go for Romelu Lukaku as the top goal scorer. Already the top goal scorer for Belgium of all time, 59 times in just 91 appearances, and 38 of those have come in competitive matches. Belgium are in a group with Russia, Denmark and Finland. And if Belgium can get a couple of decent wins in those games, particularly in the game against Finland, Lukaku could put some serious goals away in this tournament. And for me, I know a lot of people are kind of talking about Harry Kane as the likely top goal scorer in this tournament. Maybe someone like Mbappe as well, but I'm backing Romelu Lukaku here all the way on.
It's a good shout. You want a few minnows in the group to rack up those goals. Very quickly then, at the end, Shane, your young player to watch?
I'd pick Roman Yaremchuk from Ukraine. He was 25 years of age, 4 goals in qualifying, a focal striker for them, but he wasn't young enough then, I decided. 25 wasn't young enough. So I've actually gone for Dejan Kulusevski for Sweden. Again, they're in a group with Poland, Slovakia and Spain. 21 years of age, plays for Juventus. He's a winger, but he's capable of playing up front as well. Scored and assisted in Coppa Italia for Juventus, and his performances have been incredible. He's versatile. He can play a midfielder attack, as I said, and he's seriously impressed the Swedish manager, Janne Andersson, clearly in the build-up to this one. He's only played 12 games and scored once for Sweden, but he's a player that I think this tournament is set up very nicely for him to kind of catapult himself into the world stage. So Dejan Kulusevski for Sweden, the 21-year-old, is my young player to watch on.
Nice one, Shane. Good stuff. We're going to be getting Mark Lawrenson's take on a few of those questions as well after 9 o'clock. But up until then, we're going to be focusing on the tennis. Colm Boohig, come on in. How are you?
Morning, on. Morning, Shane.
So we're going to go through our 15 love point, our 30 love point, our 40 love point, and our game point here, as we do every morning with you. So where are we starting today?
We're starting with the Roger Federer withdrawal after his third round victory over Dominic Kupfer on Saturday night. I don't know if you watched it, lads, but it was some match. The first 3 sets were decided in tie breaks, with Federer taking 2 of them. But Kupfer was unbelievable. He played so well. And then the defining point of the match is right at the end of the 4th set. Kupfer had an easy smash at 15 love up and missed it. And from there, Federer broke and saw out the match very, very late on Saturday night. In fact, they went into the wee hours of Sunday morning, French time. And it was a real, I wouldn't say emotional, but it was an incredible sight to see such a legend of the game, for many the best to ever play tennis, come back after a year out on the cusp of his 40th birthday, having had 2 knee surgeries, and to win a match that competitive. And just to show that, that's how ridiculously talented Federer is, that he's far from match fit. He hasn't won a Grand Slam since the Australian Open in 2018. He's only won the French Open once. That was way back in 2009 when Rafael Nadal lost one of his 2 matches he's ever lost at the French Open earlier in that tournament. So when you factor all of those deficiencies really into Federer's game in 2021, to beat a man who's significantly his junior and to beat him in 4 sets was a remarkable achievement. But then wake up on Sunday and you read the quotes from his midnight press conference in Paris, and he's hinting at the fact that he might not even play the 4th round. And when I saw the quotes initially, I thought, okay, he's just saying that to not quite buy him an excuse in the 4th round, but to say, look, I'm not going to be sharp now after that match, because that was 3 hours and 35 minutes, which is longer than any training session he's had since his return from knee surgery. And then later on Sunday in the afternoon, there was a statement released by Roland Garros confirming that Federer had indeed withdrawn from the tournament, which meant his 4th round opponent, Matteo Berrettini, got a bye into the quarterfinal where he'll play Novak Djokovic. And that's the real shame, because Federer was set to play Djokovic in the quarterfinal, which is to happen tomorrow night, Wednesday night, in front of a crowd in the night session. And we're deprived of that now because Federer withdrew. I can see why Federer did it. As I just said, they're 39, 2 knee surgeries. He's not fit. He doesn't feel he's up to it. Just to play devil's advocate, if Novak Djokovic had done the same thing, can you imagine the reaction?
Yeah, well, there you go. So that's interesting. That's Federer. That's our 15 love point. Another great of the game at 30 love here, Serena. And I think is our quest for wanting to see Serena become the all-time major winner, is that starting to dwindle before our eyes, Colm?
Yeah, look, out of the 2 between Federer and Serena, I thought Serena might have less of a chance just because the women's game is so strong. We'll get onto it in a minute, but 6 of the 8 quarterfinalists have never been to a Grand Slam quarterfinal. And one of those was Alina Rybakina, who beat Serena at the weekend. And she didn't just beat her, she annihilated her. Rybakina's a 21-year-old. To put Serena's ridiculous career into context, Rybakina was 2 months old when Serena won her first of 23 Grand Slams at the 1999 US Open. For Serena, the only thing I would say is, now I did say last week that the draw was opening up, and that was before even more of the seeds had dropped, because the seeds just been decimated at Roland Garros this year. But the only thing with Serena is that she's only won the French Open 3 times. I say only, but that's in comparison to the 7 times she's won Wimbledon and the 6 times she's won the US Open. So you wouldn't say she has no hope at all of equaling Margaret Court's 24. But I think she has 2 more chances now, and it's this summer. It's Wimbledon, it's the US Open. And if she doesn't do it then, I fear for her that she will never equal Court's record. That's not to say that she's not the best of all time in many people's eyes, and she, for many, is, regardless of the fact that Court is 1 ahead of her. But that's 1 more tournament gone, yeah. So I think there's 2 left, and it's this summer.
Right, so it's now or never for Serena Williams, and the fans of trying to usurp Margaret Court. But as you say, like, I mean, the case is very much there already that she is the greatest of all time, whether or not she does that. Let's move on to the women's side of the draw in general, because this has been very interesting the last couple of days. Like Coco Gauff, for example, getting to her first quarter-final is a story that maybe people thought they might have to wait a couple of years for Colm, or is this expected? I know, like, I mean, it's just so young to be hitting these heights already. After that win against Venus a couple of years ago, I think there was just a general sort of wait now. It'll take years for it to happen, but it's kind of starting to happen already.
Yeah, she was only 15 when she beat Venus, but she's only just turned 17. She turned 17 in March, and with that, she is the youngest Grand Slam quarter-finalist in 15 years on the women's side. But it feels like she's been around for a while, certainly in comparison to her peers who have also reached the last stage. I mean, it's scandalous how many seeds have dropped from this draw. I mean, for various reasons. I like Ash Barty, the world number one, she pulled out injured in her match. Jen Brady, who reached the Australian Open final earlier this year, she pulled out against Coco Gauff earlier in the tournament. So you have the likes of those seeds who are just injured and can't play. And then you have the likes of Arnia Sabalenka and Victoria Azarenka, who were unexpectedly beaten. Sloane Stephens being another one, a former finalist at Roland Garros. And these players coming through, there's just a fearlessness to them. I mean, I've already touched on it in Rybakina, who destroyed Serena. There's no other way to put it. And Coco Gauff, she has a bit more experience than her peers in the last eight, even though they're all older than her. She is the youngest by far in the quarterfinal stage, but she has that little bit more big game experience. And you wouldn't put it past her. She's playing Barbara Krejcikova, who beat Alina Svitolina and Sloane Stephens earlier in the tournament. But Krejcikova really is more of a doubles player. So if Coco Gauff turns up in that match, she should reach the last four. But awaiting her in that semi-final is most likely to be the defending champion, Iga Swiatek. She plays Maria Sakkari. They've never played each other before, but Swiatek's form at French Open is terrifying for everybody else. You'll know that only 7 months ago she won the French Open without dropping a set, and she's yet to drop a set in this year's tournament too. So that's 11 in a row without dropping a set. So Coco's going to have to play some unbelievable tennis if she's going to get past her. That's if she makes the semi-final. But at 17 years of age, lads, like, to get to the quarter-final, it's some achievement, and it'll be interesting to see the longevity of her career.
Right, okay, so Gauff versus Swiatek, I think we all want that to happen. You sold that very well. Hopefully that's going to be one of the semi-finals. In the men's side of things then, I think you don't need to do much dressing up of what a potential semi-final might be here.
Friday night, lads, book it off. I know the Euros start the same day, but it's going to be Rafa Nadal against Novak Djokovic, all going well. Nadal plays Diego Schwartzman in the quarterfinal. He actually beat him at last year's semi-final. Now, Schwartzman has beaten Nadal on clay before in Rome last year, but that was best of three. And that's the thing with playing Nadal and Djokovic for the rest of the field, is that they are beatable in best of three. But when it comes to best of five, taking 3 sets off these lads is just so difficult. And you saw that yesterday with Lorenzo Mazzetti, the 19-year-old Italian, who won the first 2 sets against Novak Djokovic, looked imperious. His backhand, he was hitting one-handed backhand winners down the line, akin to Roger Federer in his pomp. He was slicing the backhand. He was causing Djokovic all sorts of trouble. Djokovic was getting very ratty with the ball boys and ball girls, telling him to give him the balls quicker. He had a face like thunder. He walked off the court at the end of the second set, got changed, came back. And in the third set, he just came out as a different player and absolutely annihilated Mazzetti for the next 3 sets. In fact, Mazzetti didn't even finish the match. He packed it in at 4-love down in the 5th set because he was just knackered because Djokovic destroyed him that much. And that's the problem. I mean, it's almost embarrassing because these lads are in their mid-30s, but they're just so much better than everybody else when it comes to best of 5. But there are a raft of fantastic players coming through in the men's side. And as I say, you could beat them in best of 3, but best of 5 is another story altogether. The only shame this year, lads, is that it's the semi-final, Nadal against Djokovic, because Daniil Medvedev is seeded 2. So we're deprived of that final. But Medvedev, just a note on him, he's hilarious. He had never won a French Open match before at all this year. And now he's into the quarter-final, no bother to him at all. He's only dropped 1 set. And he's playing his arch nemesis tonight, Stefanos Tsitsipas, which Neil already touched on in the news round. I'd advise, if anybody has some free time tonight, to go on to ITV4 or Eurosport and watch that match, because there is a lot of needle between those two. You have the economist in Medvedev against the dreamer in Tsitsipas. It's a clash of styles and ideologies, and it'll be some match because Each of them have only lost one set. Tsitsipas is the favourite to get to the final, but nobody expected Medvedev to be this good. So tonight should be brilliant.
Wow, I did not know that about Medvedev. That is absolutely remarkable that he hadn't won there before. Colm, great stuff. You've set the table beautifully for the week ahead. I'm sure we'll catch up with you again over the next couple of days before that cracking semi-final, hopefully on Friday night.
See you, lads. Thanks.
Cheers, Colm. Right, we are turning our attention back to the football in just a while. Mark Lawrenson is on standby. We'll be talking about Hungary against the Republic of Ireland tonight, and we'll be getting his Euro 2021 preview. Back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
So I went down there and honestly it was like walking into a Bond movie.
So happy to welcome to the show Mr. Roddy Doyle. He is a Chelsea fan.
I remember in 1970 when they won the FA Cup and I was 12 and it was the best day of my life. I remember charging out into the back garden.
And in fact the bloke who man-marked Graham Jeanette got a broken jaw off Graham. I shouldn't laugh.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
Invisible Threads, a Go Loud original.
As we celebrate the 6th anniversary of marriage equality, Invisible Threads meets older members of the LGBTQ community who reflect on their journeys and tell their stories. From shame and isolation to conversion therapy, from living with fear to coming out as an older person. Join me, James O'Hagan, for this powerful 8-part series, winner of the first Go Loud Podship.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're very welcome back. It is 6 minutes past 9 on this Tuesday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM, and we are turning our attention once again to the football. Mark Lawrenson, good morning.
Morning, all good?
All good, all good. So we want to get into Euro 2020 in just a moment and get your take on a couple of different questions here, but I just want to start with the Republic of Ireland. The Andorra game was never going to be billed as an important game if Ireland had won it, but when they did, and this is perhaps back to a level of expectancy that we would have be associated with Ireland over the last couple of years. So how important can a win, albeit against minnows, be for a team low on confidence?
Well, it gives them something, obviously, to build on. We were one down as well, were we? Was that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So can you imagine how they felt on the bench? Can you imagine all the coaching staff, how they felt on the bench thinking, oh, crikey, the headlines already. So, no, it was obviously a good comeback. Look, it is all about confidence. The problem is it's Andorra and it's you know, painters, decorators, plumbers, whatever you want to say, but you've still got to beat the opposition. We know we've got an awful long way to go, and we can have this conversation virtually every week, but until we get something up top that was going to score or somebody on a regular basis for us, it was just going to be really, really difficult. And as we know at this level, it's all cyclical. I mean, look at Scotland at the moment. It's taken them an awful long time to qualify. They've had a succession of managers who, in the club football, have been relatively successful, but you know, it's until Clarkey's kind of come in and sorted them out, but they've also got players now at the same time. It's all about players, and until we get more quality, better quality, this is the way it's going to be, I'm afraid.
It's interesting when we think about what those players need to be doing at club level in order to have a meaningful impact on the Ireland team, because it is interesting with Troy Parrott, for example, who had a tough season. Like we can't make any bones about it, and then comes along and bangs in 2 goals. Again, it is just Andorra, but still it is a brace for a kid who was struggling with form all season long. Can you put the cart before the horse in that respect, Mark, I guess, by having a player who is shooting the lights out at international level but perhaps struggling with club, or is that just wishful thinking?
No, you can't. I mean, it's possible. I mean, the thing with Troy is he's probably over the course of the last season, he's probably learnt more about. He's learnt more about the game. He's learnt more about himself. He's probably learnt the fact that, you know, he might have to work harder. He'll be getting coached every single day, because you know, just if a player's struggling, you don't suddenly drop him because you think he's got massive potential. So look, everybody has a season. Even the top players, you know, the top players coming to the Premier League have a great season, and the next season they're not quite as good. don't get me wrong, they're still very, very good. But everybody straight away goes, oh, he's not the same player. Well, you know, that's the way that it is. And what doesn't kill you, it actually makes you stronger. And once you realise, you know, exactly what you should be doing and how you should be playing, which he probably will be by now because everybody's telling him, he'll just develop. And that probably goes for everyone, in all honesty. But without that ability, he wouldn't. But he's obviously got ability. So, you know, eventually he's going to become a very good player, I would expect.
Stephen Kenny was asked in his press conference yesterday about his tenure overall so far. He said that he would have wanted to have done better overall. I wouldn't try to paint a different picture. He said, I think there's a clear vision of the team we want to create. I want the team to have a clear identity. He mentions the fact that 13 players have made their senior competitive international debut in that period, and he said that is a radical shift, and we are creating a stronger squad going forward for the 3-game windows, a team that the supporters can identify with. Is there a sense, Mark, that even if the result perhaps doesn't go their way tonight, the next round of fixtures with fans in the stadium, let's not forget, for the Republic of Ireland, will finally be met with this sense of general appreciation for the team?
Well, you would hope so. You would hope so. And look, you know, Stephen Kenny, he probably doesn't sleep at night. In fact, I know he won't sleep at night at all, because he probably still thinks, regardless of the way that they play, it is all about results, and always will be. So I think he's obviously trying to play a particular way, which is great. And what I would say is, you know, the FAI are actually giving him the time to develop the squad, but also to develop the way they play. But at some stage, you've got to start winning games. That's the necessity. Crowds back, massive, absolutely, as we know, and that will be the test. But you know, let him keep doing what he's trying to do. It'd be daft now just to kind of cut him off at the hip and say, well, you know, you've had your chance, you've managed loads of games, and the results aren't good enough. And thank you, but no thank you. So I think we just got to stick with it and stick with him and see how we do. Basically, you know, if you think, looking at all the players that he's got, if you think that he's improved them, then he's doing a good job. But the problem with that is that's great. But again, you've got to win games. It's just an absolute necessity in football life.
And it's interesting as well, looking at how he's tried to implement his own game plan over the past year or so, and the way in which they got at Andorra last week was through a number of different crosses, basically. And maybe we thought that crossing was a dying art in football, but actually at international football, something more route one can often pay off, even if it doesn't feel like that's the way your identity actually fits in line with.
Yeah, well, you just got to have a mix, haven't you? And, you know, I mean, you go back to Jack and everyone, it was route one. But, you know, we had really good players in wide areas who delivered the ball in the box. And the thing about that is if you're say we're just knocking long balls in all the time, and I'm defending against these long balls, I'm facing the play all day, and it's much easier. But if all of a sudden you're in wide areas, the opposition, and you're crossing balls in, you're kind of on the half turn, and you don't necessarily know who's behind you, who's kind of running in there, who's going to come and run in front of you. So I think that's the difference. I mean, look, you know, you watch games. Look at, I'll have to go back to Liverpool because they're probably the best example. But look at the two fullbacks, the way that they cross. I mean, and don't underestimate, but you know, the quality of the crossing is brilliant. But you know, it's those wide areas where it comes in from, and they're smashing it in there. You know, they're bending these balls in for players to run onto them, and as I say, it's really difficult to defend. And if you also cross with pace, you know, you've got the spectre there where, you know, you'll get own goals as well. So it's a long process, but you know, you've got to applaud the FAI in many ways, because they go, you know what, we're gonna stick with this and see what we do. They want to be in competitions. They would love to have been in the Euros, you know, because of the money, etc., and everything about it. But it's not happened. So let's just make sure when obviously we start qualification again for whatever competition, that we're in there and we're in with a chance and a shout of actually qualifying.
Well, let's talk about the Euros then, Mark, because we want to get your take on a few different aspects of predictions, I guess, for the next couple of weeks. We'll start at the end to the final next month. Who do you think is going to be the winner for Euro 2020 in your book?
Well, listen, if this goes to form, I mean, France should win this. I mean, they've got kind of almost 3 teams. They've got real strength in every single area of the pitch. Won the World Cup, etc. Same manager. Nothing really changes. They've got match winners. So I would go for France. I think England will have a chance because basically they're at home, aren't they? But the only problem with England is, and we've seen it before with them, is they have one very bad day in the competition, and sometimes if that bad day is in the knockout part of the competition, then they're out. And the other thing with England, I'm not quite sure they really know what their best team is now. At the moment, I should say, and they've got 1 or 2 injury problems. But, I was just reading at some of the stuff this morning. If you look at most of them, the top teams, so your Germany, Netherlands, Italy, Portugal, who else have I missed? Belgium. They all think they've got a chance of winning this competition. It's probably, you might argue that, the French apart, it's a really open competition. And the other thing, of course, is if you don't get out the first group, I mean, then you don't deserve to win anything, because what is it? So it's 12 first and second place teams, and then another 4.
Yeah, only 8 go home.
Yeah, which is, well, you know what that's all about. It's all about money. So it's more games for UEFA, more TV money. But listen, that's just the way that it is. So it's funny as well in these competitions that you look at the games beforehand, the friendlies, they mean diddly squat. They really seriously do. And you can be awful before the competition starts. And then all of a sudden, you go in the first game, everything clicks, you get a win, and you're off and running. So it's going to be very, very competitive. I think it was good. I don't like the way that it's set up in all these other different countries, etc., which was, I think that was Platini's baby before he got kicked out, wasn't it? But that's just your way for trying to mess all the time and make things better. And to be honest with you, if it ain't broke, you don't really need to fix it.
Mark, you mentioned England there during your answer, and I guess the squad of 26 as opposed to 23 helps Gareth Southgate. He's got a lot of strength and depth in that team. But I mean, I was reading Karen Carney in The Guardian at the weekend, and she was talking about that, teams that have won major tournaments in the past, the reality is they all have experienced spines. They have lots of caps between them. I mean, should the relative lack of experience of the likes of Sancho, Mount, Bellingham, Foden, clearly very talented players, all of them, but is the relative lack of experience at tournament level maybe a concern for England, that maybe they don't have that, I guess, experience in the spine that Karen Carney's talking about? Well, I think when you mean spine, I think looking at England, you kind of look at the back 3, which arguably it will be. It doesn't look like Maguire certainly won't. He'll miss the first, maybe even the second game. So that's a blow. And why do you play with the back 3? Well, you either play with the back 3 because you've got 2 wing backs who are brilliant, or you don't quite trust your 3 central defenders, which is trust 2 central defenders, which is why you go to a 3. So I get Karen's point, and I think it's a good one as well. And I just think that's England's Achilles heel at the moment, defensively, especially without Maguire. And we know Maguire's not particularly quick or anything, but he's a headache kick it centre back. He's a really, really good organiser, and if you've got a little bit of pace alongside him in the other 2 positions, then obviously that makes up for the fact that he's not quick. It looks like the goalkeeper's coming into form at the right moment, so that will be a bonus. I think probably with England, they've probably got too many players to pick from, and the Bellinghams and the Fodens and Sancho and all those boys. They're going to be top players, but it's just that can you play all 3 of them? No. Can you play 2 of them? Not sure. So if that's the case, which one is it going to be? I mean, I think Foden's going to be, he's already a top player, and this might be, a great time for him, but where are you going to play him? And who's going to play, not necessarily alongside Keane, but either side of Keane? That's the other thing as well. And exactly how are you going to play? Do you put Grealish in there? He's probably got so many questions which he has to answer, Gareth Southgate. So
in many ways, it's a fabulous problem to have, but it's a major problem for England. The fact they've got so many good players in certain similar positions, what you actually do with the team.
So what would you do, Mark, just on that forward constellation? So you have Harry Kane. Who are you playing around him?
I'd play Sterling, and I would play Foden. And our Sterling's, he looked towards the end of the season that he's lost a little bit of confidence, etc. But do you know what? He's lightning quick, absolutely lightning quick, and in those positions, you know, full-backs, whatever you want to call them, or wing-backs who play against you, the thing that you really, really hate is pace, because it can tear you apart. You know about trickery, you know all about those kind of things, but pace is the big thing. And I think I play him on the right and then I have Foden on the left, and Foden would probably drift in and let the left wing back, whoever it may be, come and almost play as a left-sided midfield player going forward. But I'd have Foden in the team, because also he sees passes that, you know, even the most experienced players don't see, and he's had a fantastic season. And then you can load the game after that with the bench. We talk about, you know, Sancho and Bellingham and all those kind of players. Again, fabulous pace, dribbling skills, all those kind of things. I think that's the thing with football as well now. It's almost, at times, you almost play two teams in the majority of games because of the amount of substitutions that you can make.
The other thing with England, Mark, and like you talk about the home advantage of this England team, and it is stark. It is just a quarter-final if they top their group that they will not have to play in Wembley. At the same time, you look at the back pages this morning, The Guardian, Johnson refuses to condemn fans who boo England taking the knee. It's the same in a lot of the other back pages. Yeah. This idea of the knee being booed beforehand is something that Gareth Southgate has come out and said, I will not answer any more questions about it. So we've said our bit, we're going to continue taking the knee, and that's it. It feels like this is one of maybe a number of potential pitfalls of being a team with such massive expectations, playing in front of massive home crowds that are unlike anything they'll have seen in the last 15 months or so. Is there a way that home advantage, basically, Mark, could actually be to the detriment of England this year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, you look at majority, probably more the Red Sox in terms of the papers, they're expecting England to win. But I don't know what they're basing it on. Because, as we know, in major competitions, they've been awful. Apart from, obviously, the World Cup, where they were lauded, and quite rightly in some respects. But if you actually looked at the games that England won in the World Cup and the games that they lost, they beat a lot of ordinary teams, and when they played good teams, they got beat. So, but that's just the way the English journos are. They have this thing which, you know, the Premier League is the best thing on this earth, which it might be, in all honesty. And why does it attract the best players? Well, of course, it's the money, as everybody knows. But I think the expectation is because of the Premier League, not necessarily because of England's performances. And the other thing as well, a little bit with them, I feel, is sometimes they try and play a little bit too much. And if you've got that much pace from wide areas, from midfield, etc., just get the ball forward and obviously start to make things happen. Anybody can kind of tippy-tappy it around, but, you know, and play in front of other teams. And I just feel with England, if they actually, you know, if you start right up there in terms of your output, you can always come down a little bit once you start winning the game. It's very difficult to go from like 70% to 90, 95 in the game, because everybody has to be aware that you've got to do it. So the expectation is massive with England, and it always has been. But we'll see, because, you know, the other thing with the results when they lose, everybody just goes, well, same old England. It's a bit like talking about Arsenal, isn't it? You know, massive potential at times, and then all of a sudden they end up getting beaten by a team that they should never have even beaten, never even been beaten by.
Mark, you've picked France as your likely winners of the tournament, but the European Championships traditionally have often been quite good for the underdogs, like Denmark in '92, Greece in 2004, even Iceland 4 years ago performed remarkably well as well. So who are you picking as your dark horses for this year's competition?
Oh, my goodness me. Do you know what? I think Scotland might do okay, you know. because the England game is, well, the battle of whatever, and they will be seriously motivated for that. I could see them getting a draw against England. I really can. And then what we've got, Croatia, and who's the other team we've got to play? Czech Republic, who, well, we know a bit about them because of the West Ham players, etc. And they'll be physical and aggressive. But I think, don't Scotland play them at Hampden?
They do.
I think they play them. So, listen, the Jocks might just get through. But apart from that, I don't see any massive sort of upsets. I think as well. I mean, just the way the system and the league is basically. Let's be honest. It's to get all the big teams through, isn't it? Because if you seriously mess up in the league basis, you can still crawl in. And I think that's basically that's again a bit of a UEFA thing, which is let's have everybody in. Let's have Portugal and Spain and Italy, Belgium, Belgium are in anyway, but they want all those teams basically. They want the best teams in it, don't they? They're not really bothered about the kind of North Macedonias of this world, etc. But that's just the way that UEFA operate.
Just on Scotland, Mark, I'm just looking at the fixtures here. So they have the Czech Republic in Hampden. The England game's actually in Wembley on Friday the 18th of June, and then
do you know what?
Hampden Park again for Croatia.
That won't matter for the Scots. They love going to Wembley. Absolutely love going to Wembley. The manager he knows what he's doing as well, Steve Clark. It doesn't really matter that they play at Wembley because they'll still play the same way against England as they would have done at Hampden. So yeah. So sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely, fire away. And I guess on the Golden Boot as well, we mentioned a couple of players earlier on. A lot of people back in Harry Kane, understandably so. We mentioned Robert Lewandowski as someone who's been banging in the goals in Bundesliga this year. Romelu Lukaku's in the running too, and there's plenty of others. Yeah. But who do you fancy for the Golden Boot at this one, Mark?
I'm going to give you Antoine Griezmann.
Right.
Purely and simply because I do think France will be in the final, so they'll have played more games than any other team apart from one, and he plays in a team that will create lots and lots of chances, and they really seriously can change it from the bench, the way that the French play. So I'll go Antoine Griezmann. I mean, Mbappe is going to be a shout as well, isn't he? And I get the Harry Kane thing, but I'm just not sure with England at all. I really aren't. And as I said before, I'm not sure that they know the best team. And there'll be some important people missing from their opening games, as we know. Henderson's a big player for them, and obviously also Maguire.
Griezmann's quite the shout, Mark. I like it. I think Benzema is coming back as well as is possibly a nice shout from the French standpoint as well. It'll be interesting to see if there's any disruption in the chemistry of that team, I guess, with his return. So
there's bound to be. The French, they're bound to fall out. They will. It's a bit like, remember, it's now Netherlands, of course. We used to call them the Dutch, and I remember Ruud Gullit. I remember speaking to him at something a long time ago, and about the national team, and he said, "Oh, we're great." He said, and then we just have a row over that somebody's passed the wrong knife. He said, and it all just completely collapses. And I mean, the French can be a bit like that. They can be like that as a nation, to be fair, can't they?
Yeah. It's always pretty funny when it does happen. Like, I mean, nobody else had any sleep in 2010 when the whole thing imploded. Let's just put it that way. Finally, Mark, we're just asking people: is there any young players that you're particularly looking forward to watching? I know probably in England in the UK in general, it's probably like Billy Gilmore in Scotland and Phil Foden in England are probably the two young stars that everyone's most looking forward to. But who are you going for there?
Well, I mean, they talk about Sancho, but this kid Bellingham, who is just a kid, isn't he? He plays with a fabulous maturity, and he's got great ability, and he's probably, along with Foden and Sancho, the kind of the fearless. They haven't really had major disappointments in everything they've done, and they've been extremely well coached. I mean, the two lads who play in Germany, you can just see they're extremely well coached, and they know when to use their ability and when to play easy. But he excites me, Bellingham. He's one of those, you look at him and he's always likely to do something. So listen, he may not even make a start in the first couple of games, but last couple of times I've seen him, he's looked like he's been there 10 years, and it just looks so easy to him. And also, he just makes fabulous decisions under pressure. So let's go for him.
So what is actually your prediction with England, so Mark? If you had to call it, are they going all the way to the final? Is that game against that group of death runner-up going to beat them in?
I'm going to go glorious failure.
Which means?
Which means probably out in the semis.
Out in the semis. Okay, interesting. That could be. Who could that be? That could be Spain or Austria, maybe. Is what my predictor is telling me on that semi.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry, in the semis. Well, my apologies. No, it would actually be the Netherlands, semis, Turkey, Denmark side of the draw. So that really would be glorious if they managed to get over Portugal and Spain and then lose to Turkey or something. That really would be.
Yeah, well, that's
something.
them.
Yeah,
that's them, innit? And that's basically what they got. That's what they got in Russia, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Glorious failure.
Absolutely.
I mean, remember when dear old Roy Hodgson was in charge in was it South Africa?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean, they were the first team to lose the 2 games, weren't they?
Yeah.
The first 2 games. And I mean, it's just. I mean, I've spent so many years covering England and stuff, and it's just honestly, it's mad. The whole thing about the whole bandwagon of following England is just bonkers. And they win a game, and it's like, wow, they're the best team in the world, and they're so not. But hey, it's just something they got to deal with.
Mark, enjoy the circus.
Will do.
Thanks a million. Mark Lawrenson there on the line, whetting the appetite nicely for the Euros. Shane, I'm unbelievably buzzing for this next couple of weeks. Like the early tournament feel of, I don't know, watching North Macedonia against Austria at 5 o'clock this Sunday afternoon is something that I just can't wait for.
Those are the games. Those are the games that us football men will watch, Eoin, and enjoy. Yes. But when you hear people like, I love the Antoine Griezmann pick as a top goal scorer, because no matter who you ask, and any discussions I've had with friends in WhatsApp groups over the last week, and will continue to have over the next few days, everyone is an expert. Everyone has a different view on all of these questions we've been asking, Mark, this morning. And anybody's guess is as good as anyone else's, because you'll ask someone about England and they'll say, England are going to win. Look at their squad. There's no way England can't win this tournament. And then you hear someone else saying they won't get out of their group. They'll just crap themselves like they always do in major tournaments. And this will be an absolute disaster for Gareth Southgate. So that's the beauty of it. That's the reason we're going to be glued to the TV sets over the next few weeks. I just cannot wait for this tournament. It's going to be incredible. And I think the fact that it's 12 host cities is going to add a different dimension as well. You're going to get some teams playing at home. Hungary getting to play in Budapest, by the way, in that group of death. A couple of home games is just such a massive opportunity for them. And for England, if they can get that far, to have a semi-final or final in Wembley, would just be incredible for their fans as well. So many strands to look forward to.
That's a really good point about the group of death, actually. I want somebody to come on and make the case for Hungary to be the surprise package in this year's competition, because I think you might be able to build one slightly. If they can get one win, obviously, then you're in business with one win in this format. But as you said, a home advantage, and the fact that everybody's obsessed about these 3 teams that are definitely going through. But like the other thing actually about that just kind of connected to that is people refer to that as the group of death. For me, it can only be a group of death if there is enough jeopardy about it. Like, there is a world in which Spain, France and Portugal all qualify from the group of death. Nobody's died. It's not a group of death if nobody dies, nobody gets knocked out. It's only a group of death if, like, some of those big teams are not going out of it, or not coming out of that group. So enough of this group of death talk about Group F. It's a group of good teams, but let's not forget that the group stages is merely just a preamble, a beautiful preamble, but that's all it is really in the grand scheme of things. But still think Hungary could maybe make it a group of death with that home advantage. A couple of comments coming in. Great reaction to James Skehill on the hurling earlier on. Dennis says, what a contribution, get Skehill on ASAP. He has been really interesting every time he's been on the show with us on OTB AM over the last couple of weeks. So looking forward to speaking to him again. If you missed it, go back and check it out. Shane asked him about perhaps the technological advancements in hurling over the last little while and how it has changed the face of the game. As a science man yourself, Shane, you must have been fascinated by the fact that it's the rims, not the weight of the ball, that is affecting the game.
I could not believe, as James spoke, I was more and more in awe of his tactical and technical analysis. I mean, we're talking about the boss of the hurl, the rim, the weight, baseball. He's pulling stats left, right and centre of the weight of baseballs, the weight of hurls. the weight of slitters going back 15, 16 years compared to now. I asked the question expecting a reasonable answer, but that was taken to the next level. We talk about being football men, Owen. Only real hurling people will have understood and copied and taken down and appreciated what James Skehill said on the show this morning, because it was really good insight. He's clearly looked into this, and as a goalkeeper, like, the weight of the slitter is important to him, but he's kind of played this down and said we shouldn't be getting carried away with the negative aspects. And there has been a lot of negative talk about the advantage rule, about the weight of the slitter. There's too much free flowing and easy scoring happening in games from long range frees. But he just ripped that apart, and I love the numbers. I love the numbers and the stats and the grams. As he said each figure in grams for baseballs and slitters, I just got more and more excited. That was incredible from James.
Shifty Lad has been in touch to say, in hurling, why don't they make the rules so that whoever gets fouled takes the freeze? Standards would rise for every player. That is an idea I like. That is an idea I like a lot, Shifty Lads. Like, I'm sure it would just make Patrick Horgan and TJ Reid more of a target in open play, but I think that would add a tactical evolution again. But then I guess the reaction to it would be defences fouling the cornerback whenever they get on the ball, because they know the cornerback won't be able to score from 100 yards. Well, maybe they will. Maybe cornerbacks will be scoring from 120 yards before the year is out, like at the rate hurling is actually developing. Damien's been in touch to say Le Mans 24-hour race for the bucket list, Shane. Costs a fraction of Formula 1. Amazing. It's a great shout. August 21st this year. Does that overlap with your trip to Belgium?
No, the trip to Belgium is actually the following week. So Who knows? We could maybe combine the two and go to Le Mans as well. Like, a lot of people would probably pick the Masters at Augusta, maybe the World Cup final, things like that. But like, as I said earlier, the excitement of the last year and a half in terms of getting back to view live football has got all of our bucket lists kind of ready and excited. So I'm going to never take for granted live sporting experiences ever again and make my list even longer, I think. Yeah, well, neither will any of us, to be honest with you, Shane. Suggestions for Shane Hannon's bucket list, we will appreciate them and keep them coming in over the course of the next day or so. We'll be back with you at 7:30 on OTB AM tomorrow to go through some of those comments. We've been live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Make sure as well to keep an eye on our social channels, and we're going to announce our performance rankings competition winner there. We'll also announce the winner of our Expert Electrical €150 giveaway in the next little while. Expert Electrical is your home for large screen televisions this summer. On OTB Sports Radio today, there's loads of good stuff coming up, from Johnny Kilban to Legends interview with Barry Geraghty. As I say, we'll be back from 7:30 tomorrow, where we'll be reacting to Hungary versus Ireland. Keith Wood will be with us, and we'll also be speaking to Bernard Brogan. Right now, though, here is Kieran Donaghy.
All right, well, the 2021 All-Ireland Football and Hurling Championships are almost upon us. Only a few months since we had them last time round as well. And Sky Sports are back covering it again this summer. 18 championship matches across the big and small ball for Sky Sports, including all six of the All-Ireland semis and finals across both codes as well. Kieran Donaghy, four-time All-Ireland winner with Kerry and now member of the Armagh backroom team, is going to be part of that coverage as well. Old friend of the show, Kieran Donaghy, as well. We haven't seen you in a while, Kieran. What's been up?
I tell you why you weren't long forgetting about me.
God almighty, like, I mean, was it all those Monday mornings on OTB AM that you were so sick of that you had to go the whole way up to Armagh just to come up with an excuse? I mean, we can take a hint, we can take a hint.
No. I was saying, I enjoyed my time in with the lads, but doing enough travelling without trying to get into the after ball studio as well, lads. But no, they're doing good stuff now, enjoying the football pod with Andy Moore and Paddy Andrews, and Tommy Rooney's doing a good job in the middle of it. So it's good stuff always been produced by you boys. We're well aware of that. But looking forward to the football championship ahead and covering some of the games of Sky Sports. It's something I've enjoyed over the last 2 years, and actually got a lot of learnings of working with the likes of Jim and Peter. And Senan Connell inside in the studio. You pick up some stuff off them, and it's that's good for a young fella like myself.
Absolutely. And was the fact that you were up and down the country, live at the ground so often across the last couple of years with Sky, still keeping your toe dipped in the game as such, that probably
that probably kept the drive in you, that when an opportunity like Armagh came up, it was something you wanted to take? Or had it always been in your mind maybe to get into the coaching?
Yeah, the coaching was probably always in my mind. You know, I got in with the Galway Hurlers the year after I retired, and that was throwing myself in the deep end. And I read a good article by Ron O'Gara there, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and he was talking about not going into a comfort zone, but going the other way. You know, throwing yourself into uncomfortable situations. And that was certainly an uncomfortable situation for me, but the boys, in fairness, were brilliant. The Galway boys were brilliant to me getting up there. And yeah, I took the Treacy IT last year. So coaching is, you know, I would have, you know, I do my basketball camps the last 5 or 6 years. So I like the coaching side of it, and trying to learn, because you have a good knowledge as a player, but you know, there's a bit of practice in the coaching side of it as well as anything else. And even though you might have a great idea or something, it's actually, you know, the challenge is getting that across the group. So covering the games with Sky was obviously, the broadcasting was something I did like and enjoyed. And yeah, I was Sky is something that has been kind of really good to me over the last number of years, and as I said, the learnings that I've got working with the team, even Brian Carney and Rachel and Brian in studio, you know, on the broadcasting side of it, was really enjoyable as well. And you know, certainly hot and ball off Peter Canavan, you have to be very much on your toes for Peter. He'd cut you in half with a look. And he loves nothing better than surprising you live on air with a little jibe to see how you handle it. So he's king of the trash talkers, and he has the persona of being the nice, gentle guy out of myself, Jim maybe, but he's a stealth assassin behind it all.
And himself and Jim as well, I presume as well. They've been in your ear now for the last few years, telling you just how great Ulster football is. So you had to come up and get involved.
Yeah, no, they certainly were, and they've certain perceptions of other championships, and but obviously, look, the amount of counties that are competitive in Ulster, in the Ulster Championship is huge, and yeah, no, certainly when Kieran asked me to get involved, having played with him, you know, as a player in 06 with the international rules team, played against him, and obviously he was a coach of mine down in Australia, and you know, having heard and talked a lot of the Kildare boys and the love and affection they had for him as a manager, and the fact that he would do anything for his players, you know, certainly was a big factor in it. And plus, my job having me in Dublin on a Thursday and Friday makes it feasible to get up and down to 2 sessions a week, which is what I'm doing. So it's been really enjoyable, yeah.
And yeah, that kind of leads me to, how has it been so far? Obviously, with the way the season's gone and things have been curtailed, you're still probably only just kind of in the door as such there with the, you know, the way, obviously you couldn't have been training for the first few months of the year. You're really just a couple of months in there. I presume there were a lot of like Zoom calls, getting to know the players, things like that, before you were actually on the ground with the tracksuit and the whistle.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there was, you know, Zoom was probably the only way we could communicate. Obviously, sure, everybody was in local 5-kilometer lockdowns, and you couldn't meet anybody anyway. So, you know, whether I was living up there or down here, it didn't really matter. It was all done through the Zoom initially, and I think was it the 4th of April or something, whatever that Monday was, that we were able to go back training. We got stuck into it in full flow, and it's been kind of, I suppose, you know, a very interesting journey, I would say, over the last number of weeks. You know, I think the GA could have done a better job of maybe giving teams a bit more time to get ready for the intensity, and I think we're probably seeing a lot of injuries on the back of it, and we've been small bit unlucky with a lot of contact injuries, actually knees and ankles and stuff like that. We've been quite good on the muscle sides of it. Our backroom team there, Julie, who does all the physical training with the lads, and Shay as head physio, have the boys in great shape, but we've just been a bit unlucky with some ankle rolls and bits and pieces like that. So you know, it was quite a short window to to get guys up to game speed, because Neil, you can run all the straight lines and you can do all the gym you want, but the split second reaction of deciding to chase somebody, and the split second reaction of going for a ball, getting a bang at the wrong time when you haven't taken a bang in 6 months nearly, is something that you, no matter what you do in physical preparation, you can't actually prepare the body for that side of things, or it's very hard to, at least. So it was fairly full on there to try and get through the games, and try and hold our squad together. We as I said, we've been unlucky with a few bad contact injuries, so we're firefighting, but the boys that have come in have done really well. So it's been really intense. I think the players on the step up from Division 3 to Division 2, and now obviously into Division 1, they've reacted very well to it.
Are the players now at that level of the season where, even though, as you said, the pre-season part of it had to be quite rushed, and you've had to play 3 matches already so far as well, are they kind of at the point now where, there's 1 game left in the league campaign, you're on the verge of championship, that you are at the right pitch now in terms of fitness and match sharpness?
No, I would say there's probably still another bit to go, I would say, with fellas, because we haven't been able to train in the last 3 weeks, because obviously the games every weekend. So when we had to rush so much in 3 weeks, and then you have games every week, the midweek is trying to keep bodies fit and healthy, and maybe go over a few bits and pieces. But I think the next week and a half, and then we've obviously a huge game against Roscommon to come, who are going really well as well. Push Kerry very, very far last Sunday. You're after that, then you're going to have a lot of sore bodies again. So you're going to have to, that early part of the following week will be curtailed a bit, and then you probably have about a 2-week window, because the third week is the first round of the Ulster Championship. So the calendar might read 3 weeks, but really you can only get 2 weeks proper training in, because you're a week coming down off a game, and you're 3 or 4 days out from a game. You can't be going too hard either. So probably the next month we'll get fellas up to proper pace, I would say.
Yeah, and in terms of what you've seen on the pitch, like it's been fairly cutthroat this season with the way the league is, where you have 3 games. Looking at the table earlier on, like yourselves and Tyrone were separated by 4 points on a table. I know Tyrone actually beat you, but like they scored 2 points more and conceded 2 points less. They have a crack at winning Division 1, whereas in a week's time, Armagh in theory could be relegated to Division 2. Like the margins are so small, and the prizes and punishments are obviously so heavy at this point of the campaign, that I would imagine you have to kind of remove yourself just from the scoreboard as such and look at it as, say, a win, a draw, a loss so far. It's a reasonable take, Yeah,
no, it's a great question, and look, it is. I suppose it is very tight. The margins are very tight from us being in a when the whistle blew. I think Monaghan would have been a minute to go in our game. Monaghan were winning by a point, and it looked like we'd be going through. And then Tyrone obviously equalised with Matty Donnelly in the 77th minute, and then took the lead, and then Monaghan came down and got the equaliser. So that last few minutes were quite intense, trying to get messages onto the players to let them know what was going on. The draw is good enough. Actually, the draw is not good enough. So it was a fairly hectic last few minutes, but that's how tight it is. Look, and we're reasonably happy with how we performed and the level of consistency that we showed. And that Tyrone game, even though we did lose by 4 points, we were right in it at stages, and momentum swings were huge in that game. So yeah, look, it's been a huge learning curve for the players, and I must say, they have to take huge credit in how they've adapted to life in this intense Division 1 with only 3 weeks of prep for it, having not played it before, any of them. So it's a huge step up in pace. I even heard Andy Moore on Off the Ball on the football pod the last day, talking about being at the Mayo Westmeath game, and he said he'd been playing Division 1 football his whole career with Mayo, and he hadn't been to too many Division 2 games, and he said that he thought there was quite a fall in the level of intensity, not the level of skill or quality on show, but actually that level of intensity that comes with with Division 1 and the speed and pace of it. So, you know, our boys have to get great credit for managing that on a 3-week build-up. But, you know, I think all the divisions and, you know, and all the leagues have been super intense. And I think, you know, I think the score lines and the brand of football that's been played, Neil, is very appealing to the eye. And, you know, it's the game that I love, Gaelic football. And, you know, there's an awful lot of people bashed it for a while when the score lines weren't too high in their numbers. But I think certainly so far this year, the level of football and the scoring and the level of accuracy by players on show and the brand that we're putting out there has been absolutely outstanding so far from all 4 divisions. And the quality of score lines, when you see 122 to 125, you know, even looking at Antrim, you know, we're playing them in the first round of the Ulster Championship and they're scoring 316 and winners in the last minutes of games and hugely entertaining games and high scoring games. So that's great for the brand of Gaelic football. And you know, even that's all on top of, you know, teams just getting 3 weeks to get ready for it. So you know, it's football's in a good place at the moment, and when it is in a good place, I think we should talk about it being in a good place, because we're quick enough to bash it when it's not.
Yeah, we certainly are. And particular, I know we joked about it earlier on about Peter Canavan and Jim McGuinness getting in your ear telling you how great Ulster football is, but like the matches have shown, the scorelines have shown this season, and if you were to look back at last year's Ulster Championship, it's been a trend for the last few years that the much maligned Ulster Championship for probably the previous 2 decades has been having an absolute renaissance for the last few years. Both the quantity of scores, the quality of scores, the quality of play all round. Is it a case where you have such a competitive provincial championship, and as we've seen here, like the northern section of the league as well, is so competitive between Armagh, Donegal, Tyrone, Cavan winning it last year. Like, there are so many teams. Derry seem to be on the up as well at the moment as well. Antrim, as you've mentioned a couple of minutes ago as well, that when you have that many teams, that the competition ultimately is going to breed quality.
It is, yeah, and you've got the whole factor with all those teams, and you know, the knockout element last year and this year has brought such an edge to every game. There's no backdoor, there's no breathing space. If you have a day where you don't perform, or if you have a day where somebody, you know, does something silly and gets sent off, you know, there's no comeback for you. So you know, and we saw that last year with Kerry, you know, just not at the pitch of it and didn't perform overly well, and Cork, who came to play and performed really well and got a win, and then 3 weeks after it's roles reversed again, where, you know, your Tipperary come down and they turn up the heat and they put in a big huge performance, and you know, Cork don't bring the same level of performance that they brought the week before. So that whole element of knockout, you know, is definitely another added factor. And you know, I think hopefully now the news breaking that there's going to be, you know, crowds back in the games, and I think with the vaccine levels being ramped up and the amount of people that are going to get vaccinated over the coming weeks, you'd hope them numbers increase, and you know, I think players and I think football will even rise again further in the summer with quality levels when you know, we're starting to get to maybe the 10 or 15,000s into these big venues, and you're getting a bit of a buzz of an atmosphere, because teams put out the performance they did last year. And I was at the games with Sky, and there's nobody in the crowd. You know, it's you can hear a pin drop. You can hear every message from the subs coming down, from the management coming down. You can hear everything so clearly. But like, you know, even with the crowd coming back, it's going to make for it even better. And look, I think, you know, the Leinster Championship is probably the one, obviously, that Dublin have a stranglehold on at the moment, but you know, given what happened in Munster last year and your competition in Connacht and Ulster, it's going to make for a really enjoyable year of Gaelic football.
Mm-hmm. Now, we aren't fully in love with the game at the moment. The advanced mark has been taking a bit of a battering over the last couple of months. How have you found it so far this season?
Yeah, look, I think the ideas around the advanced market, I think what they were trying to bring in, Neil, was akin to maybe what we see in hurling, a bit more 50-50 ball, more ball pucked in, that bit of excitement, people on the edge of their seat. But the original rule was something like outside the 45 and into the 21, which means the ball will be hanging for 2 or 3 seconds, which means it'll be in the air long enough to create a competition, which was the original rule, or maybe what was talked about day one. But this tweak to 20 meters and, fellas tipping little balls across the line. And, I think if you kept it from the 45 into the 21, or even went further into 45 into the 13, what you're getting then is a mark if somebody catches a big ball in around the house, which is, obviously something that, I tried to do for Kerry for a long time. And I was often in vain catching a big ball and landing and having 4 fellas not even jump at me and just wrap me up in the ground, and we get called for over carrying. So I was a fan of it originally in its original format for what it was brought in. But I think, we have to catch on to ourselves with the amount of tweaking we're doing and how hard we are making things. And I think the referees have done an incredible job so far this year with what's been thrown at them, because I've refereed a few in-house games and a few in-house training sessions in Armagh. With all the rules, you really want to be a rocket scientist to know what's going on at times. So I think we could strip back, maybe talk to teams, get some feedback. The GA could go and get some feedback from club managers and club teams at the end of this year, and indeed inter-county managers and players. And let's see what the people that are out there putting the product on display feel about them, and maybe take that back to people at Congress and see if there wants to be something done, because some of them are definitely head scratchers and maybe over tweaking them, trying to be too smart with them. Maybe if we'd kept that mark simple outside the 45, inside the 21, it means the ball will be in the air so long that it has to be a contest. And I think that's what people wanted to see. I think what's bugging people so much about it is we're seeing very little contest with the mark, and
it's constant players finding space, out around the pitch, and it's just slow.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not what, the Aussie rules, what makes the mark so good is the ball is, there's all the little zippy ones around the field, but then it's the ones where they're coming down the pitch and they're trying to get it inside, and they've got the big man or they've got somebody inside that's a good ball winner and they want to put it into them. I think that's the one that I don't think, even if they tweet that, I think people would enjoy that aspect of balls going in 50-50 to people competing for them. And if a forward wins that kind of a ball over somebody, or catches it or puts a knee on somebody's back and climbs above them, I think that's what I envisaged, certainly when they were talking about the mark coming in, not what we've got. So certainly looking at some of them and either getting rid of them totally, or tweaking them to make it simple. Because even the whole thing with the 20 meters, when a guy is running flat out, he's coming up to the 45 and there's a guy running out against him, is the 20 meters when the ball is kicked, how does it look when they both come together and the player catches the ball, and how close are they then? And it's a very hard one to referee, and even the whole hand up dilemma now, where the refs are blowing the whistle and players are subconsciously thinking, he's blowing the whistle, I've got a mark, if they don't put up their hand. So it's quite complicated, and I think we could strip it back and make it very simple, and allow players and even allow the ref common sense to say, if there's a ball kicked in from 50 yards and the guy catches it and he lands with 4 people around him, that you just give him the mark because he can't get out of there. Or if he catches it in there and lands towards goals, that you leave him go and have his goal chance. But yeah, look, it's I think what the players and what the players are doing around the country has to be hugely admired for the product they're putting out. But certainly what's coming down from Congress at times is overly complicated and could be really looked at and try to be simplified or gotten rid of altogether.
To go off on a brief little tangent there, you mentioned stepping in, reffing a couple of training matches between yourselves. What's Kieran Donaghy, the referee, like? I'd imagine let the game flow, is it?
I think when Kieran McGeeney refs in the backs get everything, and I think when Kieran Donaghy refs in the forwards get everything. So I think we're going to have to get somebody of a neutral standpoint. We're going to have to find either a referee to come in full time, or maybe a midfielder who might be somewhere in the middle to come in and referee them. But it's I actually can't believe how calm the players are when we are reffing the game. And I think Kieran demanded a lot of respect when he was refereeing games maybe before I got up there. So I think that might be a part of it.
What are you like as a coach is what I'd like to know as well. Have you kind of found the Do you enjoy all of it, or is there maybe a certain part of it that you enjoy? Do you enjoy being out on the pitch with the whistle in your hands running the drills? Do you enjoy the man management side of things, or is it the, you know, afterwards doing the analysis of the training session, watching things back on the video? Like, is it all of that, or are there certain elements of it that you do kind of gravitate towards?
Yeah, look, drills, I like to keep them kind of simple. I think it's the less complication, just trying to get a simple drill with decision making involved is what I'd be more trying to focus on. But yeah, no, I'm probably finding my feet as a coach at this level, and I said that to the boys when I got up there, that I'm largely inexperienced in this role, and that I'm very open to any feedback that the boys or the management team have to help me improve. But no, it's I like the one-to-one stuff. I like talking to players. I like talking with the management on the tactical side of it and stuff that we can do. And it's all it's very much a learning experience for me, Neil. And I'm just trying to get better. I suppose that I can give these players more, and I'm constantly looking to try and improve on that side of things.
Is there a certain role that you have within this setup at the moment, or are you essentially like you're just part of the everyday coaching setup? You're kind of involved in all aspects of the training.
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection just went a bit here there for a second, but yeah, no, I didn't quite get to start that question, but yeah, I'm a coach and a selector with them, and it's something that that I really look forward to getting involved in. And that lockdown was very frustrating for me, because all I was doing was watching videos on games over the last number of years that they'd played in, and seeing little bits and stuff, and not really being able to do anything with it. So Kieran did a good job in putting a lot of Zooms together at the start of the year to try and get some messages across to the players that we could, introduce when we got onto the pitch, and not, give them, not to be out there in the training field talking about stuff that they've never heard before. So he did a good job in kind of correlating our thoughts as coaches, along with Kieran McKeever and Dennis Hollywood, as a backroom team, that we were, able to talk and kind of project our thoughts to the players. So when we got up to the training pitch, and when we were able to finally get going, as I said at the start of April, was around that side of things, being able to bring stuff that they knew what we were looking for.
Would your perspective change at all, approaching it from a coach's point of view rather than when you were a player?
I think it's easier it's easier to have answers as a player, because it's just your thoughts, and it's unless somebody unless some of the management want to take it on board, they'll remain your thoughts and your ideas. Whereas when you are involved in a backroom team, you got to bring it to the backroom team first. You got to sell them on it, and then you got to go sell the players, and then you've all that done, and then you're trying to hope it works out in the training pitch, and hope that you start seeing some of the stuff you're talking about pay off and work. And it's been a challenge, obviously, having only 3 weeks to get some of the ideals from all of our perspectives in, whether it be Dennis, whether it be Kieran McKeever working with the backs, and Kieran overall. Kieran McKinney is probably a bit easier. He's got the 2 goalies. He gets quite a lot of one-on-one time with them. He's doing, working really hard with the boys and doing a good job with them. So it's kind of, it's been a challenge. And then obviously midweek, as I said to you earlier on, with 3 games, it's been hard, because we haven't been able to train basically midweek. There's only so much you can do. You're trying to review the game the week before, and you're trying to build up for another game, and you're trying to keep the bodies fresh as well.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved